Day the sky cracked open. I was not standing on a tower with a legendary sword in my hand. I was not roaring at a dragon. I was not surrounded by cheering survivors who believed I was the hope of humanity. I was hiding behind a vending machine with one shoe missing, two ribs screaming, and a goblin chewing on my backpack like it owed him money. That was my heroic beginning. My name is Liam, and in the city of New Haven, people like me were called leftovers. When the gates appeared, everyone received abilities. Some got flames, some got blades, some got beast forms, some could leap over buildings or freeze entire streets with a finger snap. I got a storage skill so weak it could barely hold 3 cans of soup and a cracked flashlight. The first time I used it, the flashlight fell back out and hit my foot. People laughed so hard I thought the monsters would come over just to see what was funny. Big guilds ignored me, the mid-guilds rejected me. Even the beginner party that formed in a grocery store parking lot told me I could carry bags, but only if I promised not to touch the expensive gear. So I became the guy nobody looked at twice. I cleaned monster blood off barricades. I dragged broken carts through safe zones. I traded batteries, bandages, and canned peaches. I learned which alleys stayed quiet after sunset and which subway tunnels screamed before something came out. And every day, the same heroes walked past me with shining weapons and expensive jackets, acting like the apocalypse had been made just so they could look cool. Cole was the worst. Cole moved like a lightning strike and smiled like he owned the air around him. He did not wear bulky armor or carry a tower shield like the idiots who wanted to look like walking castles. He wore a black coat, fingerless gloves, and 2 thin blades that hummed with blue sparks. Every time he killed a monster, sparks crawled up his arms like the world itself was applauding him. He once tossed me a broken dagger and said, "Try not to cut yourself, Liam. We need someone alive to sweep after us." Everyone laughed. I laughed too because when you are weak, sometimes laughing with them hurts less than being the only quiet person in the room. But then the 7th wave hit. That night the moon was red, the air smelled like burned metal, and every warning bell in New Haven started ringing at the same time. A gate opened under the Eastern Avenue, not above it, not beside it, under it. The street folded inward like a paper cup, swallowing cars, lamps, concrete, and screaming people. Then thousands of claws began climbing out. The front lines shattered in minutes. The strong hunters ran toward glory. The rich guilds ran toward loot. The smart survivors ran toward shelter. I ran because something with 8 arms had decided I looked delicious. I cut across an old shopping district where signs still flickered over broken windows. A pack of bone dogs chased me through a clothing store, and I jumped over a mannequin so gracefully that I immediately fell into a display of winter coats. For one glorious second, I thought the coats had saved my life. Then a bone dog crashed through them like a blender with legs. I grabbed the first thing my hand touched, a metal clothes rack, and swung it with all the courage of a terrified raccoon. The rack bent around the monster's skull, the monster fell over, and I ran again before it could remember it was supposed to kill me. Outside, the street had become a river of monsters. Spiders with human teeth crawled across buses, tall things made of ash stepped over rooftops, goblins carried kitchen knives and laughed like children who had discovered fire. I ducked into a half-collapsed subway entrance, slid down the stairs, and found a dozen survivors already hiding there. One of them looked at my empty hands and said, "Great, we got storage boy." Even then, even with death screaming above us, people still found time to mock me. Then the ceiling cracked. Everyone ran deeper into the station. I tried to follow, but a chunk of concrete dropped between us and sealed the path. Dust filled my mouth. My flashlight flickered. Something howled behind me. I backed away until my heel hit empty air. The platform edge had collapsed. I fell, not into the tracks, not into water, not even into darkness. I fell through a broken dungeon wall that should not have existed, through a thin layer of glowing stone hidden behind old subway tiles, and landed face first on a floor so white it hurt to look at. For a moment, I thought I had died and gone to the cleanest hospital in existence. Then I heard breathing. Thousands of breaths. I lifted my head. The chamber stretched farther than any subway tunnel, wider than any stadium, brighter than noon and colder than a freezer. The walls were smooth white stone covered with moving silver lines. The floor was arranged in glowing circles, each circle holding a sleeping monster. Goblin circles, bone dog circles, ash giant circles, spider circles, dozens of monster types, maybe hundreds, lying still with their eyes closed. They were not dead. They were waiting. My brain tried to understand what my eyes were seeing, then immediately quit and asked for a vacation. A goblin lay 3 feet away from me, snoring with its tongue out. Its knife rested beside its tiny hand. I froze. The goblin did not move. I scooted backward. Still nothing. Then the silver lines under its circle pulsed once, and the goblin's body became blurry, like an image loading on a bad screen. A crack of blue light opened above it. The goblin woke up, yawned, grabbed its knife, and vanished upward. A second later, distant screaming echoed from somewhere above. That was when I understood. Every monster killed outside came back here. Every wave, every hunt, every boss fight, every monster farmed by the strongest guilds. They all respawned in this hidden chamber before being sent back into the city. Everyone else was fighting the apocalypse from the front. I had fallen behind the walls. And for the first time since the gates opened, nobody was laughing. I did what any brave man would do. I panicked so hard I kicked myself in the chin. And I crawled behind a sleeping troll and tried not to breathe. The troll smelled like wet carpet and rotten onions. I had spent the last month running from things like it, and now I was using one as furniture. That was when a bone dog appeared inside a circle nearby. It materialized in layers, first the skeleton, then tendons, then black fur, then teeth, then a small crystal dropped beside its skull, shining like a coin made of moonlight. The dog did not wake up. It just lay there, breathing slowly. The crystal was right there. I stared at it. My storage skill could barely hold anything, but it could hold that. I reached out one shaking hand. The bone dog snored. I touched the crystal. It vanished into my storage. A tiny message floated in my vision, calm and polite, as if I had not just robbed a nightmare while lying under a troll. Monster core acquired. My heart tried to jump out of my chest. Then the bone dog's circle pulsed, and it vanished back into the city without its drop. I waited for lightning to strike me. I waited for the room to crush me. I waited for all the monsters to open their eyes at once. Nothing happened. Outside, hunters risked their lives to kill monsters and collect materials after the battle. Inside, I had just stolen the reward before the monster even woke up. My fear did not disappear. It became something else. Curiosity. And curiosity, in a world full of monsters, is either a death wish or the beginning of a scam so beautiful it becomes history. I stayed in the chamber for 6 hours. At first, I only watched. Goblin respawned every few minutes in one of the smaller circles. Bone dogs appeared in groups of 3. Ash crawlers took longer, maybe 15 minutes. The bigger the monster, the longer it slept before launch. Each circle had a silver mark above it, a floating symbol that pointed somewhere outside. When I touched one, I saw a blurry image of a street corner, an alley, a rooftop, or a tunnel. Spawn points. I started marking them in dust with pieces of broken tile. Circle 1 sent goblins to the subway stairs. Circle 2 sent bone dogs to the shopping district. Circle 3 sent spiders to the bus depot. Circle 4 sent ash giants to the East Avenue, which explained why everyone there was currently having a very bad evening. Then I found something even better. If I scratched a line across the silver mark with a monster claw, the circle hesitated. The monster inside did not wake up on time. It stayed asleep for an extra 10 seconds. 10 seconds does not sound impressive until you are being chased by a creature that can remove your spine like a zipper. With 10 seconds, a survivor can turn a corner. With 10 seconds, a trap can reset. With 10 seconds, a weak guy like me can stop being prey. I scratched deeper. The next goblin slept for a full minute. I scratched a circle around the mark. The spawn point flickered, searched for a path, and redirected the goblin to the next nearest exit. I stared at my claw tool. I stared at the chamber. I whispered, "Oh no." Then I smiled. Oh yes. By sunrise, I had stolen 13 cores, 2 goblin knives, a bundle of spider silk, 3 bone dog fangs, and a shiny egg from a creature I refused to identify because it blinked at me from inside the shell. My storage skill, the pathetic joke of New Haven, expanded after the 10th core. It did not become huge. It became clever. I could stack identical items perfectly. 1 fang took space. 100 fangs took the same space. 1 goblin knife took space. A pile of goblin knives collapsed into a neat little icon, like the universe had decided to organize my crimes. I almost cried. Then I stole 20 more things. When I finally climbed out through the broken wall, the city was smoking, the wave was fading, and hunters were bragging about how many monsters they had killed. Cole stood on a ruined bus, wiping blood off his blades while a crowd cheered. He saw me crawl out of a subway entrance covered in dust and slime. "Well," he said, "Storage boy survived. Did you hide in a locker?" The crowd laughed again. This time I laughed too. But not because it hurt. Because inside my storage were enough monster cores to buy his coat, his blades, and maybe his whole attitude. I sold the smallest cores that afternoon to a trader who did not ask questions. Then I bought chalk, rope, metal spikes, cheap smoke bombs, 5 backpacks, and the biggest sandwich I could find. I ate the sandwich on a rooftop while watching guilds gather below. The city believed the 7th wave had ended. I knew the monsters were already sleeping beneath them, waiting for the silver lines to send them back. And I had a claw sharp enough to change where they woke up. The next few days turned me from a survivor into a thief, a researcher, and a menace with excellent time management. I mapped the chamber in secret. I gave every circle a number. I learned monster sleep cycles. I learned which drops appeared before waking and which ones appeared only after the body fully formed. I learned that touching a monster during deep respawn did nothing, but touching it during the last 3 seconds was a terrible idea that resulted in me being slapped across the room by a half-loaded goblin. I learned that spider silk could be tied to silver marks and used like a leash. I learned that bone dog fangs could carve deeper than monster claws. I learned that if I placed a core from one monster type beside the circle of another, the room sometimes confused the launch path for a heartbeat. A heartbeat was enough. I began redirecting single monsters. Goblin meant for a crowded shelter appeared instead in an empty parking lot. Bone Dog Wave headed for a school gym woke up inside an abandoned sewer tunnel. A spider nest that should have dropped onto a hospital roof landed on the roof of a guild warehouse used by killers. That warehouse belonged to the Black Lantern leader. The leader ran the Black Lantern Guild, which sounded dramatic until you learned their main talent was attacking tired hunters after monster fights and stealing their loot. They did not call themselves criminals. They called it survival. I called it cowardice with better boots. They had cornered me once before, 3 weeks after the gates opened. The leader had smiled at my torn jacket and asked what kind of treasure a storage loser was hiding. When she found only canned beans, she tossed them into the street and told her people not to waste a blade on me. I remembered every can. So when I discovered that one spider nest could be delayed for 4 minutes and redirected by looping silk around 2 marks, I gave the leader a gift. Her guild was celebrating after ambushing a small party. I watched from a rooftop across the street as they dragged stolen packs into their warehouse, laughing. Below my feet, through the hidden wall path, 16 spiders were sleeping in the white chamber with full silk sacks. I tied their spawn marks together like shoelaces. Then I carved a new launch direction with a bone fang and whispered, "Delivery." The warehouse roof opened in blue flashes. 16 spiders dropped into the party. The screams started cheerful, like people thought it was a prank. Then the webbing hit. I did not send monsters to kill them. I was not trying to become the thing I hated. I had studied the spiders. Their first instinct after spawning was always to web anything moving, then build a nest before feeding. That gave me about 40 seconds. I fired a flare. Harper arrived with the city guard unit in under a minute. Harper was not a guild hero. She was not flashy. She carried a shock baton, a short blade, and the exhausted expression of someone who had kept civilization alive with caffeine and stubbornness. She had once given me a blanket after a wave, and unlike everyone else, she remembered my name. When her unit kicked in the warehouse doors, they found the leader's people wrapped in spider silk, besides stolen equipment from 6 different victims. The leader cut herself free just as Harper stepped inside. For 1 second, I thought the leader would fight. Then a spider sneezed web into her face. I laughed so loudly from the rooftop that a guard looked up. I ducked behind a chimney. Next morning, everyone in New Haven was talking about the mysterious spider trap that exposed the Black Lantern Guild's stash. Cole claimed it must have been a high-level tactical ability. Owen, the only person who still traded with me before I had money, leaned across his counter and said, "You know something about this, don't you?" Owen had a shop made from a converted coffee stand. He sold batteries, cheap charms, broken gear, monster jerky, and advice that was sometimes useful by accident. I put a bag of spider silk on the counter. He stared at it. Then he stared at me. "Liam," he said slowly, "why do you have fresh silk when every spider from last night was confiscated?" "Good shopping route." "Your shopping route goes through nightmares. Only on discount days." Owen looked at the silk again, then grinned so wide I knew I had made a mistake. "You found something stupid," he said. "I find many things stupid." "No, you found something world-endingly stupid." I should have denied it. Instead, I bought 3 more sandwiches and said nothing. That was how Owen became the second person to suspect I was no longer a joke. He did not know about the chamber, not yet. I did not trust easily. In the apocalypse, secrets were armor, but Owen helped me sell materials without drawing attention. He split stacks of cores across different buyers. He traded monster silk for blank talismans. He found me a tool belt, gloves that resisted acid, and a small grappling hook that fired exactly once before breaking and almost removing my ear. I loved it anyway. My next goal was simple. I needed power that worked outside the chamber. Stealing drops was nice, but if someone caught me in the street, I still fought like a wet paper bag with anxiety. So I started building gear from respawn materials. Goblin knives became trap teeth. Bone dog fangs became carving needles. Spider silk became wire stronger than steel. Ash giant powder became smoke bombs that burned cold and blinded heat-sensing monsters. And the little blinking egg became my greatest regret. I kept it in storage for 2 days. On the third day, it hatched. Not in my hand, not on a table, inside my storage. My storage skill screamed silently, expanded in panic, and ejected a round baby slime directly into my soup. The slime was pale blue, the size of a basketball, and had 2 tiny black eyes full of criminal innocence. It ate the soup. Then it ate the bowl. Then it tried to eat my sock. I named it Pip. That was probably the first truly ridiculous choice I made after the apocalypse, and I stand by it. Pip was not strong, but Pip was weird. Because it hatched from a respawn egg stolen before launch, it had no assigned spawn point. The chamber did not know where it belonged. Monsters ignored it. Silver marks slid off its body, and when Pip ate small monster drops, it duplicated them badly. 1 fang became 2 fangs, but the second one was rubbery. 1 goblin coin became 3 coins, but one had a bite mark, one was sticky, and one screamed faintly when dropped. Still, duplication was duplication. I spent an entire night feeding Pip tiny materials, while Owen watched through a cracked window, whispering, "This is either genius or how we invent a new disaster." "Both can be true," I said. By the end of the night, I had 200 rubber fangs, 40 sticky goblin coins, and a pile of screaming coins that I immediately realized could be used as alarms. I tied them to spider silk tripwires. The first person to step on one was Cole. He had followed me into an alley after seeing me buy expensive rune chalk from a black market stall. "Liam," he said, leaning against the wall like he had rehearsed it, "people are saying you've come into money. You know, weak guys who suddenly get rich usually found something they can't protect." I looked at his lightning blades. I looked at the tripwire under his boot. I looked back at him. "Careful," I said, "the ground is dramatic today." He smirked and stepped forward. Every screaming coin in the alley went off at once. The sound was not loud like thunder. It was loud like 50 goblins learning opera inside a metal trash can. Cole flinched so hard his lightning blades sparked into a puddle and blasted steam into his face. I walked away while he coughed and cursed behind me. For the first time, he did not laugh. The chamber became my kingdom, one scratch at a time. I discovered there were layers. White floor handled common monsters, a lower ring handled elites. A sealed arch at the far end pulsed with red light whenever a boss died outside. I could not open that arch yet, but I watched it carefully. Every boss that fell in the city left a shadow in the wall before respawning somewhere deeper. I wanted that room, but I was not ready. Common monsters were toys if you understood the timing. Elites were different. They slept lightly. Their circles had thicker silver lines. Their drops had guarding sparks. When I tried to steal a claw from a sleeping razor beast, its eye opened halfway and my soul briefly packed a bag. I survived by throwing Pip at it. Pip bounced off its face, made a squeaky noise, and the beast went back to sleep out of confusion. From that day forward, Pip was promoted from soup thief to tactical asset. My first elite experiment nearly killed me, made me rich, and gave New Haven the stupidest rumor of the month. A pack of flame apes had been terrorizing the North Market. They were fast, aggressive, and loved throwing burning fruit at people. Hunters hated them because the fruit exploded on impact and smelled like spicy bananas. Cole's guild announced they would clear the pack publicly. There would be cheers, cameras, and loot rights. I announced nothing. I entered the chamber through my subway crack, reached the flame ape circles, and waited. One by one, the apes appeared after being killed outside, snoring with smoke curling from their noses. Beside each ape, a fruit core formed, not the full explosive fruit, just the seed that made it dangerous. I stole the seeds. Then I placed rubber bone dog fangs around the circles to slow the launch. The apes woke up groggy, spawned late, and entered the battlefield without their favorite weapons. On the street above, Cole's guild fought confused apes that kept reaching for fruit they did not have. The crowd cheered Cole like he had become a legend. I was under the floor, stuffing explosive seeds into my storage while whispering, "Thank you for your labor." But then I got greedy. I fed one seed to Pip. Pip duplicated it into 7 seeds. 3 were normal. 2 were sticky. 1 was cold. 1 had a tiny face and looked disappointed in me. I should have stopped there. I did not. I planted the cold seed in an empty spawn circle to test what would happen. The next monster that appeared in that circle was a goblin. The goblin absorbed the cold seed, turned blue, grew a mustache made of frost, and sneezed an ice cube the size of a car. Then it spawned into the North Market. Above me, chaos erupted. Cole's guild had just finished posing for applause when a tiny frost goblin appeared, screamed like an angry kettle, and slid across the street on its own ice trail, freezing everyone's boots to the pavement. It did not kill anyone. It just ruined the celebration. Cole spent 20 minutes stuck in a heroic pose because his shoes were frozen to a mailbox. People started calling the event the Ice Gremlin Incident. I laughed until Pip copied me and jiggled in amusement. Then the red arch pulsed. A boss had died. The chamber shook. Every sleeping monster went silent. At the far wall, the red arch opened a crack. Heat rolled out. I saw black stone steps descending into a lower chamber. And from below came a heartbeat so large, it felt like the city itself was nervous. I should have left. Instead, I walked down. The boss respawn room was not white. It was black glass, red lines, and golden chains. Each boss circle was the size of a house. Most were empty, but shadows moved inside them like memories of things too big to fit. At the center, a massive serpent lay sleeping, its body wrapped around a cracked pillar. It had been killed near the river that morning by 3 guilds working together. I knew because everyone had been celebrating. Beside its head floated a scale as wide as my chest. I wanted it so badly my hands started sweating. I crept closer. Pip trembled on my shoulder. The serpent breathed in. The scale drifted closer. I reached out. My fingers touched it. The serpent's eye opened. There are moments in life when you discover the exact weight of your bad decisions. This one weighed about 30 tons and had fangs longer than my legs. The serpent did not fully wake, but its gaze pinned me to the floor. My body refused to move. My thoughts became a single long scream. Then my storage skill activated by itself. Not to store the scale. To store me. For half a second, I fell into my own pocket dimension. It was dark, cramped, smelled like soup, and contained every stolen monster material I owned. Then I popped back out behind the pillar as the serpent's tail smashed the spot where I had been standing. The scale remained in my hand. My storage skill had saved my life. The joke ability had learned a trick. I sprinted up the stairs while the boss chamber rumbled behind me. The serpent's circle flared, and it launched back into the city early, angry and missing a scale. I burst through the broken subway wall just as sirens started again. The river district lit up red. The serpent had returned. And because I had accidentally rushed its respawn, it appeared right in the middle of Cole's victory speech. I did feel a little bad. Not enough to stop running. The fight lasted all afternoon. Hunters cursed the sudden boss return. Cole had to fight without preparation, and for once his lightning blades were not enough. The serpent smashed streets, crushed barricades, and nearly broke through to a shelter. I watched from a rooftop, clutching the stolen scale. This was my fault. Funny accidents were one thing. A boss rampaging early was different. So I went back in. Not to steal. To fix it. In the boss chamber, the serpent's circle was empty but still glowing. Its launch mark pointed to the river district. I carved across it with the stolen scale, and the mark screamed without sound. A new option opened in my vision. Recall anchor unstable. I did not know what that meant. I jammed the scale into the mark anyway. Above, the serpent lunged at a line of wounded hunters. Below, I grabbed the golden chains around its circle and pulled. The chain burned my gloves, my arms shook. Pip wrapped itself around my waist and pulled too, which helped emotionally if not physically. The serpent's roar echoed through the chamber. I pulled harder. The golden chain snapped tight. Outside, the serpent froze mid-strike. Then half its body dissolved into red sparks. It was not dead, it was being dragged backward through its own respawn path. Hunters stared as the boss vanished from the street, like reality had yanked it by the tail. In the chamber, the serpent slammed back into its circle, asleep again, heavily delayed. I collapsed on the floor. My hands were burned, my lungs hurt. Pip made a heroic squeak. A new feeling spread through my chest. Not fear. Control. I had not just delayed a monster. I had recalled a boss. That night, the city called it a miracle. Cole claimed someone on his team must have triggered a hidden weakness. The leader, newly escaped from holding because the seventh wave had overwhelmed the cells, claimed the guilds were hiding a secret weapon. Harper investigated every witness and found nothing. Owen looked at my bandaged hands and said, "You did something stupid again." I held up the serpent scale. His face went pale. "Liam," he said, "that is not shopping. That is robbery against nature. Nature started it." He leaned closer. "Can you do it again?" I smiled. "I can do worse." The serpent scale changed everything. When I carved with it, silver marks obeyed faster, delay lines lasted longer, redirects became cleaner. I could stack small monster paths together, braid them, and release them like a spring. That was how I invented the monster slingshot. The name sounds childish. The effect was not. I would delay a cluster of weak monsters, redirect them into a harmless zone, then release them all at once through a narrow spawn point. They launched in a tangled screaming ball and crashed into whatever I aimed at. The first test fired 12 goblins into a dumpster. The dumpster lost. The second test launched bone dogs into an empty parking garage, where they ran in circles for an hour because I had drawn confusing marks on every exit. The third test was for the leader. She had rebuilt Black Lantern faster than anyone expected. Criminals are like mold. Give them darkness and a little moisture, and suddenly they are everywhere. This time, the leader did not just steal loot. She started targeting small safe houses and demanding protection payments. No meetings, no politics, just a knife on the table and a threat in the air. Harper could not catch her because the leader never attacked when guards were close. I could. Not directly. I was still publicly Liam the storage loser. So I became bait. I walked through the South Market at dusk carrying a badly hidden pouch full of fake cores. They were Pip copies, shiny but worthless, and they hummed like drunk bees. The leader's people followed me within 5 minutes. I led them into an unfinished apartment tower where every floor had exposed beams and broken windows. They surrounded me on the 3rd floor. The leader stepped out from behind a pillar, smiling like the city belonged to her. "Liam," she said, "I knew the little rat had a shiny hole somewhere." I held up my hands. "Careful, I'm fragile." "You're rich. Also fragile." She drew a curved dagger. "Tell me where you're hiding the real goods." I looked past her at the chalk line I had drawn under the dust. Then I said, "Above you." Blue light opened in the ceiling. The monster slingshot fired. Packed ball of goblins, bone dogs, rubber fangs, sticky coins, and one extremely offended frost goblin dropped through 3 floors like a meteor made of bad decisions. It hit the middle of Black Lantern and exploded into chaos. Goblins ran everywhere. Bone dogs chased the goblins. The frost goblin froze the stairs. Sticky coins glued boots to the floor. Screaming coins howled every time someone moved. The leader tried to leap at me. I stepped backward through a spider's silk line, and the floor under her feet snapped upward like a trap net. She slammed into the ceiling and hung there wrapped in silk, furious and upside down. I looked up at her. "You know," I said, "for someone who loves ambushes, you really hate being surprised." Harper's unit arrived 90 seconds later because I had sent Owen to alert them before the trap began. They found stolen goods, tied criminals, stunned monsters, and the leader hanging upside down with a goblin coin stuck to her forehead. Harper looked at me. I looked as innocent as a man covered in chalk dust and monster slime possibly could. "What happened?" she asked. "They attacked me," I said. A screaming coin went off under someone's shoe. Harper stared for a long second. Then she sighed. "I am going to pretend that explains this." The leader glared at me as guards cut her down. "You're not weak," she hissed. I smiled. "No, I'm worse, I'm petty." After that night, New Haven changed its opinion of me by exactly half an inch. People still mocked me, but now they did it with nervous smiles. Cole stopped calling me Storage Boy in public. He called me Liam, which sounded almost painful for him. Owen started selling little charms branded as anti-goblin luck, which were actually just sticky coins wrapped in cloth. They did nothing, but they jingled dramatically, and survivors liked dramatic things. Harper watched me more closely. And I kept growing. My storage skill evolved again after I stole enough boss residue. It gained sorting rules. If I stored a monster drop at the exact moment a respawn circle pulsed, the item gained an echo. Not a full duplicate, not yet, but a ghost layer. Pip could eat the ghost layer and spit out a flawed copy. I experimented for 3 days and nearly flooded Owen's shop with rubber serpent scales. The copies were useless for armor, but perfect for shields that bounced impact. So I made a coat. Not a shiny hero coat like Cole's. Mine looked cheap from the outside, gray and worn, the kind of coat nobody wanted to steal. Inside, hidden between layers of cloth, were overlapping rubber serpent scales, spider silk threads, and ash powder vents. The first time a goblin stabbed me, the blade bounced off and hit the goblin in its own face. I laughed so hard the goblin got offended. Then I started building more. Slime bombs that expanded into cushions. Fang caltrops that crawled toward heat. Smoke marbles that burst into cold fog. A pocket trap that opened for half a second and swallowed incoming arrows into my storage, then spat them back out later when I sneezed. That last one needed work. But every mistake made me stronger. And every monster killed by the city gave me another visit in the chamber. Hunters trained by fighting. I trained by robbing the afterlife. The next major wave came from the West Park. It was a plant-type outbreak, which sounded manageable until the trees started walking and the flowers began screaming people's names. Guilds hated plant monsters because they spread roots under barricades and healed when cut. Fire helped, but fire in a city full of gas leaks was what smart people called a bad plan. Cole's guild prepared to attack from the front. Harper evacuated civilians. Owen sold nose plugs because the flowers released pollen that made people confess embarrassing secrets. I went below. The plant monsters had their own section in the respawn chamber, green circles blooming across white floor. Their drops were seeds, bark plates, and glowing sap bulbs. The sap bulbs were the key. When a plant monster died, the bulb formed beside it first. The monster used that bulb to heal when it woke. If I stole the bulb, it spawned wounded. If I replaced the bulb with something else, things got interesting. I had a pile of cold flame ape seeds. I had sticky goblin coins. I had Pip, who looked at every terrible idea like it was a snack. So I built the dumbest garden in history. I delayed 20 thornwalkers, stole their healing bulbs, and replaced each one with a cold seed wrapped in sticky coin paste. When they woke, the cold seeds bonded to their roots. The thornwalkers spawned in the park and immediately froze themselves to the ground. Cole's guild charged in ready for a deadly battle and found 20 tree monsters stuck in place, shivering. Then the screaming flowers spawned. I had replaced their pollen bulbs with screaming coin dust. Instead of releasing confession pollen, they shouted their own weaknesses. Cut the stem, one screamed. My roots are soft, another wailed. Fire scares me emotionally, cried a third. The hunters were so confused they forgot to be heroic. Cole sliced through the first line, then looked around as every monster announced exactly how to kill it. From below, I was laughing so hard I almost missed the elite spawn. Almost. A huge flower queen appeared in the lower ring, petals folded around a humanoid body. It was not a boss, but it was close. Its sleep timer was short, and beside it formed a golden nectar crystal. I touched the crystal. The flower queen's hand grabbed my wrist. Her eyes opened. Not fully. Just enough. Vines snapped from her circle, wrapping around my arm. Thorns pierced my coat. Pip bounced forward and bit the vine, but the vine only grew more. The launch mark above the circle pulsed. If the queen spawned while holding me, I had no idea whether I would be dragged with her or shredded between locations. Neither sounded like a hobby. I had 3 seconds. So I shoved my storage portal directly into her circle. My storage skill opened like a black mouth. The queen's nectar crystal dropped inside. Then the portal swallowed the vine holding me. Not all of it, just the part connected to my wrist. The queen launched upward, missing her healing crystal and one vine. I fell backward, bleeding and grinning. Because inside my storage, the severed vine was still alive. And it was connected to her. Above, the flower queen erupted from the ground in the West Park, towering over hunters. I wrapped the living vine around a silver pillar in the chamber and pulled. The queen tried to move forward. The vine yanked her backward. From the hunter's point of view, the giant monster suddenly tripped over nothing and face-planted into a fountain. Cole stared. I pulled again. The queen rolled across the park like a decorative bush in a tornado. Hunters cheered, thinking some invisible skill was helping them. I kept pulling, using the chamber itself as a pulley. Every time the queen tried to attack, I yanked her off balance. She swung at Cole. I pulled. She punched a tree instead. She tried to release poison pollen. I tugged sideways. She sneezed into a pond. Cole finally leapt into the air and delivered a lightning slash that split her core. The park exploded in golden petals. Everyone screamed his name. I lay on the chamber floor, panting, covered in sap, holding the stolen nectar crystal. The crystal pulsed. My storage expanded again. This time it added something that made me sit up slowly. Stored monster material can be deployed as a temporary anchor. Translation: I could create small fake spawn points. Not permanent, not stable, but for a few seconds I could make the chamber believe a monster had somewhere else to go. I tested it with a goblin. I placed a goblin coin on the floor, carved a tiny circle around it, and pushed a thread of silver energy into the mark. The next goblin in line did not spawn to its usual street. It spawned 3 feet above my fake circle, landed on its backside, looked at me, and blinked. We stared at each other. Then I threw a slime bomb at it. Pip absorbed the goblin like soup with opinions. Temporary anchors changed me from a guy redirecting traffic into a guy building roads. I could not create monsters from nothing. I could not control them like puppets. But I could decide where the returning monsters woke up, how late they were, what they carried, and sometimes what direction they ran first. That was enough to turn the apocalypse into a board game. And I was the only one who could see the board. My first public display came by accident. Gate opened in the central arena, where guilds held ranking matches to show off. The timing was terrible or perfect, depending on whether you were a normal person or me. A crowd had gathered to watch Cole duel an elite fire user. Betting stalls lined the seats. Owen had a snack cart because he had absolutely no survival instinct when snacks were involved. Then the arena floor split open, and a wave of armored beetles crawled out. They were not wearing armor like people. They were armor. Their shells were dark green, their horns could punch through steel, and their legs clicked so fast the sound made people dizzy. The crowd panicked. Cole moved instantly, slicing through the first beetle. Other hunters jumped in, but beetles were stubborn, cut one down and another crawled out seconds later. I knew why. Below in the chamber, the beetle circles were close to the arena spawn point. The wave had a short loop: kill, sleep, launch, repeat. To everyone above, it looked endless. To me, it looked like a broken faucet. I slipped under the stands, found an old maintenance hatch, and dropped into the hidden tunnel I had mapped days earlier. Pip bounced after me with nacho cheese on its face. In the chamber, beetles were respawning in rows. Their drops were shell chips and horn shards. I stole the horn shards because I have priorities. Then I built a chain of temporary anchors leading away from the arena and into the old stadium parking lot. The problem was that beetles loved straight lines. If I redirected them poorly, they would crash through the crowd. So I made a maze. Spider silk lines between circles. Sticky coins at each turn. Cold ash powder to slow their legs. Rubber serpent scales to bounce them into new directions. It was less a defense plan and more a carnival ride designed by a criminal engineer. Then I released the next wave. Above, hundreds of beetles suddenly stopped emerging from the arena floor. For 2 seconds, everyone cheered. Then the parking lot exploded. Beetles shot out of blue portals, bounced off rubber scale walls, slipped on cold ash, hit sticky coins, and spun in circles until they formed a giant rotating wheel of furious insects. Owen, watching from a concession stand, whispered, "Liam, what did you do?" The beetle wheel rolled across the empty parking lot, gathered speed, smashed through an abandoned row of cars, and launched itself into the open gate that had spawned them. The gate flickered. The beetles had entered their own exit path backward. The wave collapsed. A shockwave rolled across the arena. Hunters stood frozen. Cole stared at the parking lot. Harper looked from the gate to the maintenance hatch I was crawling out of. For one dangerous second, her eyes narrowed. Then Owen shouted, "Amazing work, Cole." The crowd erupted. Cole looked horrified because he knew he had done absolutely nothing. I gave him a thumbs up from behind a trash can. His eye twitched. That day, Cole began to suspect the truth. Not the whole truth, nobody could guess the chamber, but he knew someone was bending fights from the shadows. He followed me again that night. This time I led him. I walked into an alley with no exit and waited. Cole landed on a fire escape above me, sparks crawling along his blades. Enough, he said. What are you? Tired. Do not joke. That was honest. He jumped down, smooth and silent. The serpent, the park, the arena, you were there every time. So were you. I was fighting. I was improving the atmosphere. Cole pointed a blade at me. Show me. I should have run. Instead, I looked at him and saw something I had not expected. Fear. Not of me. Of being useless. Cole had built his whole identity around being the blade at the front, but the world had changed again, and now some invisible force kept stealing his heroic moments. He hated me because he thought I was weak. He feared me because I might be strong in a way he could not understand. That made him dangerous. It also made him useful. So I said, attack me. He blinked. What? Attack me, but try not to kill me. I'm fragile, remember. His pride made the decision before his brain could stop it. He flashed forward. Lightning blades crossed toward my chest. I opened my storage pocket for half a second. The first blade vanished into it. Cole's eyes widened. I stepped sideways, released the blade behind him, and it shot out handle first into his ribs. He stumbled. I threw a smoke marble. Cold fog filled the alley. Cole slashed through it, but my spider silk lines were already attached to the walls. He cut two. The third wrapped his ankle. The fourth pulled his wrist. The fifth released a bag of screaming coins over his head. He blasted lightning through the alley, burning half my traps. Good. I wanted to know how much pressure they could take. Then he appeared behind me, blade at my throat. Got you, he said. I smiled. Pip dropped from the roof onto his face. Cole made a sound I will cherish forever. I stepped away as Pip wrapped around his head like a wet helmet. Cole stumbled, slipped on sticky coins, and landed flat on his back. I leaned over him. Lesson 1, I said, never announce victory while a slime is airborne. He ripped Pip off and glared. But he did not attack again. Instead, he laughed once, sharp and unwilling. You are ridiculous. I've been practicing. What is your ability? I crouched beside him. If I tell you, you become a problem. If you keep chasing me, you become an experiment. His jaw tightened. I held out a hand. Or you can do something smarter. When weird things happen in a fight, stop pretending you caused them. Move with them. I can make openings. You can hit them. We both live. Cole stared at my hand. Then he took it. That did not make us friends. It made us dangerous in the same direction. The next enemy was not a monster wave. It was a hunting ground. 3 blocks of downtown had become a trapped zone full of high-value monsters. Any guild that controlled it could farm cores fast enough to dominate New Haven. Leader wanted it. Of course she did. She had escaped transfer during a monster attack and was rebuilding Black Lantern again, this time with fewer speeches and more hidden knives. Cole's guild wanted it. Other guilds wanted it. I wanted the spawn map under it. Downtown had old dungeon walls everywhere, tucked behind broken subway platforms and parking structures. If I could connect those cracks to the main chamber, I could reach respawn lines from half the city. So while the guilds prepared for a glorious showdown, I dressed like a delivery worker, filled a cart with fake supplies, hid Pip inside a bucket, and walked straight into the contested zone. Nobody stopped me. That was the best part about being mocked for weeks. People looked at me and saw background noise. The zone was a nightmare. Glass towers leaned over streets filled with crawling vines. Monster nests hung from traffic lights. Burned-out cars formed tunnels. Somewhere above, winged lizards circled with shrieks like rusty brakes. I found the first crack behind an underground parking ramp. It opened into a side artery of the respawn chamber. Not a full room, more like a service corridor made of white stone, with silver lines running through the walls. Monsters did not sleep there, but their spawn paths passed through it like veins. If the main chamber was the heart, this was a blood vessel. I touched the wall. Images flashed in my mind. Downtown spawn points, rooftops, basements, alleys, sewer grates, hundreds of them. I almost laughed. Then a dagger touched my back. The leader's voice whispered, "Found you." I froze. She stepped from the shadows with 3 of her people behind her. No armor, no grand villain outfit. Just dark clothes, hungry eyes, and the kind of confidence criminals get when they think the world is too busy burning to punish them. "You embarrassed me twice," she said. "That makes you interesting." "That makes me unlucky." "No, it makes you valuable." Her gaze slid to the glowing wall. She did not understand it yet, but she knew it mattered. "Open it," she said. I looked at the spawn artery. I looked at the dagger. I looked at Pip, quietly tipping over the bucket behind her. Then I said, "Sure." The leader blinked. "You are giving up." "No, I'm cooperating in the most dangerous way possible." I pressed my palm to the wall and carved a temporary anchor with my thumbnail, using the serpent scale hidden in my glove. The wall opened. White light spilled into the garage. The leader smiled. Then 27 sleeping goblins slid out of the crack like luggage from a broken carousel. Her smile died. The goblins were still harmless for 3 seconds. 3 seconds was all I needed. I kicked the nearest goblin into the leader's ankles, threw a cold smoke marble, and rolled sideways. Pip launched from the bucket and began eating shoelaces with patriotic enthusiasm. The goblins woke up confused, saw the leader's people, saw me, then saw the bag of raw meat I had thrown onto the leader's belt. Monster instincts are simple. Meat first, screaming second. Leader cursed and cut through 2 goblins, but killing them only sent them back into the chamber. I had already delayed their circles and redirected them back through the same artery. So every goblin she killed slid out of the wall again 10 seconds later, increasingly annoyed. It was not a fight. It was a subscription service for goblin problems. I climbed onto the hood of a car and watched the leader's group get surrounded by the same 12 goblins over and over. She realized it before anyone else. "You control the return," she breathed. I tilted my head. "Do I?" Her eyes burned. "You do." That was bad. So I made it worse. I tossed a screaming coin into the air. It shrieked loud enough for every hunter in downtown to hear. Cole arrived first, dropping through a broken ramp in a flash of blue lightning. Harper arrived 30 seconds later with a guard unit. Leader had raw monster bait tied to her belt, stolen bags at her feet, and a dozen goblins repeatedly attacking only her people. Harper looked at me standing on the car. "Again." "They followed me," I said. The leader pointed at me. "He is controlling the monsters." Everyone went quiet. Cole looked at me. Harper looked at me. The goblins looked at the leader because of the meat. I shrugged. I can barely control my slime. Pip chose that exact moment to burp out 4 rubber coins and a shoelace. Cole covered his mouth. Harper closed her eyes like she was praying for patience. The leader screamed and lunged. That gave Harper all the reason she needed. A shock baton cracked across the leader's wrist. Cole's blade pinned her dagger to the floor. Guards moved in. Black Lantern was captured again, this time in front of half the downtown hunters. No one believed the leader's full accusation. But Cole did. Harper maybe did. And I knew the leader would not stop unless she was removed for good. So I gave Harper evidence. Not speeches, not clever word games. Just stolen gear hidden in the leader's packs, witness markers, and a recording Owen had made because he had started filming my traps for what he called future training, and I called blackmail with snacks. The leader was locked in a deep cell under the central station, guarded by people who had lost friends to her guild. Would she escape again? Maybe. But not soon. I returned to the spawn artery and finished my work. By dawn, downtown was mine. Not publicly. Publicly, Cole's guild took the zone after an impressive battle against weakened monsters that kept appearing in terrible positions for themselves. Privately, I had mapped every spawn point in the area and built hidden anchors in 3 parking garages, 2 subway tunnels, and 1 fancy hotel lobby with a golden statue of a man pointing heroically at nothing. I used the statue as a goblin redirect marker because it felt appropriate. My power did not grow because the world rewarded me. It grew because I kept touching things nobody else understood. The chamber taught patterns. The city gave pressure. Enemies gave excuses. And I learned faster than everyone who thought strength meant swinging harder. The first time a guild tried to recruit me seriously, they did it by insulting me. A group of well-dressed hunters cornered me near Owen's shop. Their leader was not important enough to name and too smug to enjoy. He said they knew I had access to unusual materials. He said their guild could protect me. He said weak suppliers needed strong umbrellas. I looked up at the clear sky. Umbrella from what? He smiled. From accidents. That was when I realized something wonderful. Once people suspect you have value, they stop mocking you and start threatening you. It is basically a promotion. I told him I would consider it. Then I leaked a rumor that I was carrying a serpent core through the old train depot at midnight. By 11:50, 3 separate groups had arrived to rob me. Cole watched from a rooftop because I had sent him a message that said, "Bring popcorn and lightning." Harper waited 2 blocks away because Owen had told her there might be trouble, and by then Harper trusted Owen's warnings, the way people trust smoke before fire. I walked into the depot wearing my cheap gray coat and carrying a glowing pouch. The pouch contained Pip, who was eating a glowworm and enjoying the dramatic lighting. The thieves stepped from the shadows. One demanded the core. Another demanded my storage. A third demanded my boots, which felt personal. I held up the pouch. "Before we start," I said, "does anyone here believe I'm helpless?" They laughed. I sighed happily. Good, I missed that sound. Then the depot floor lit up. I had spent the entire afternoon building temporary anchors beneath the cracked tiles, each connected to delayed respawns from the downtown goblin circles, not lethal monsters, not bosses. Just goblins with stolen frying pans, rubber fangs, and screaming coins tied around their necks. I called it the humiliation swarm. Blue portals opened. 40 goblins dropped from the ceiling. They landed badly, bounced off rubber scales, and scattered in every direction. Their frying pans clanged, their screaming coins shrieked, their rubber fangs made them look like tiny monsters pretending to be vampires. The thieves panicked. One tried to run and slipped on slime. One swung a sword and got parried by a goblin holding a pan. One climbed a ladder, only for Cole to kick him back down with the bored elegance of a man finally enjoying his evening. I walked through the chaos untouched because I had marked my coat with goblin musk that made them think I was a wall. That is not a metaphor. A goblin ran into me, apologized in goblin noises, and went around. When Harper arrived, every thief was tied in spider silk, several were crying, and one was begging a goblin to stop hitting him with a pan. Harper stared at the scene, then at me, then at Cole. Cole said I saw nothing. Harper said, "You are standing on a roof holding popcorn." I saw very little. She looked back at me, "Liam." "They attacked me," I said. Her mouth twitched. "Of course they did. That became my method. I did not hunt evil people. I let evil people believe they had found easy prey. Then I turned their greed into a cage." Smug guild enforcers who tried to steal from Owen found themselves locked inside a shipping container with sleeping beetles that woke one at a time and chased them in circles until Harper arrived. A group that ambushed wounded hunters after a gate clear was caught when I redirected harmless slime monsters onto every escape route, turning the street into a bouncing prison. A black market boss who poisoned a water supply fled into a tunnel and discovered I had replaced every exit spawn with frost goblins that froze his shoes to the floor until guards reached him. Nobody died because of my traps if I could help it. They were bruised, humiliated, webbed, frozen, sticky, terrified, and occasionally emotionally damaged by goblin screaming coins. But alive. Alive meant Harper could lock them away. Alive meant people saw proof. Alive meant I could still sleep. Mostly. The problem with becoming powerful in secret is that your secret starts taking up too much space. My chamber roots expanded. My storage became massive when holding monster materials, but still terrible with normal objects, which meant I could store 5,000 fangs but not a chair. Hip grew after eating duplicated nectar and developed the ability to flatten itself into a shield, a blanket, or once, a convincing pancake. Owen built me gadgets from materials I brought him, though he insisted on naming them. The Fang launcher became Bitey. The cold smoke belt became the dramatic exit belt. The portable anchor kit became the absolutely illegal lunchbox. I refused to call it that. Then I used it in battle and accidentally shouted, "Illegal lunchbox, go." Owen has never let me forget it. Cole became my frontline distraction. He still cared too much about looking cool, but now he looked cool while knowing he was part of someone else's trap. That made him twice as effective and 4 times more irritated. Harper became the line I tried not to cross. She did not know everything, but she knew enough to understand that when monsters behave strangely near criminals, I was probably nearby. She never asked for the full truth. Maybe because she wanted results. Maybe because she was afraid of what the full truth would do to the city. And the leader stayed locked away. For a while, it felt like I was winning. Then the sky above New Haven opened into a spiral. Not a wave. Not a gate. A spiral. It formed over the central tower, a twisting black hole lined with purple fire. Every monster in the city stopped moving at once and turned toward it. Hunters froze mid-battle. Civilians watched from shelters. The spiral pulsed, and a pressure fell over New Haven, so heavy even Cole dropped to one knee. I was in the chamber when it happened. Every respawn circle went dark. Then the boss arch opened fully. Beyond it, the lower chamber lit up red, gold, green, violet, and black. Boss circles activated one after another. The serpent, the flower queen, the beetle monarch, monsters I had never seen. Monsters with horns like broken towers, monsters made of glass, monsters with wings folded around empty faces. They were not waking yet. They were being called. Not by unseen rulers, not by the dungeon flow taking revenge. By an old raid event the city had failed to clear weeks ago. Central Tower had always been a dungeon spine. Everyone knew it. The top floors were sealed. The guilds had ignored it because the rewards were uncertain, and the lower city had easier farms. Now the tower was collecting every boss tied to New Haven and preparing to launch them in sequence. A boss parade. An apocalypse conveyor belt. And the chamber was the staging area. My first thought was terror. My second thought was, that conveyor belt belongs to me. I ran to the boss chamber with Pip on my shoulder, and Cole shouting through a communication charm Owen had modified from a broken toy radio. "What is happening?" Cole demanded. "Bad news, the tower is about to vomit bosses." "That is not tactical language. It is accurate language." "How many?" I looked at the glowing circles. "Enough to make confidence illegal." Cole was quiet for half a second. Then he said, "Can you stop it?" I stared at the boss lines, the chains, the red launch marks, the silver arteries spreading through the city. "No," I said. Then I smiled. "But I can make it weird." The first boss to wake was the serpent. Circle pulsed, golden chains lifted. The launch mark pointed straight toward the central tower plaza, where thousands of civilians were trapped in shelters below ground. I had delayed this serpent before. I knew its rhythm. I carved 3 delay rings with the serpent scale, jammed rubber copies into the cracks, and tied the chain to a temporary anchor leading not to the plaza, but to the empty riverbed north of the city. The serpent fought the redirect. Bosses had weight in the chamber, not physical weight but rule weight. Redirecting a goblin was like nudging a shopping cart. Redirecting a boss was like convincing a train to become a kite. My gloves smoked. Pip expanded around my arms like a slime brace. I pulled. The serpent launched. Above, everyone expected it to appear in the plaza. Instead, it burst from the dry riverbed and skidded across mud, confused and furious. Cole's voice crackled through the charm. It missed. "It did not miss," I said, sweating. I was extremely persuasive. "Can you do that again?" The Flower Queen's circle lit up. "Ask me after I finish crying." I did it again. And again. Not perfectly. Flower Queen appeared upside down on the roof of an empty mall, roots flailing in the air while hunters attacked from surrounding buildings. Beetle Monarch spawned inside the abandoned stadium and immediately charged in circles because I had rebuilt the beetle maze bigger, faster, and much more insulting. Glass Wolf Boss tried to appear in the financial district, but I redirected half its body into a fountain and half onto a rooftop garden. It spent 10 minutes trying to look dignified while sliding down decorative hedges. Every time a boss launched away from civilians, the city gained another minute. Every minute let Harper move people. Every minute let Cole and the guilds strike isolated targets. Every minute gave me more materials. Because when a boss respawned and launched, its chamber left residue behind. I stole all of it. Serpent heat, flower nectar, beetle iron, glass wolf shards, violet wing dust. My storage skill drank the materials like rain. Then it changed again. A new space opened inside it, bigger than before, lined with silver paths. Not just storage, a miniature routing room. I could hold temporary anchors inside myself. I could prepare spawn paths in advance and deploy them anywhere my materials touched. My brain almost melted with possibilities. Then the next boss circle lit up black. The monster inside was shaped like a giant knight, but not a person in armor. It was a hollow shell made of blades, chains, and smoke, with no face and no body inside. Its weapon was a long hook sword that scraped the floor while it slept. Beside it formed a black shard. I reached for the shard. The hollow blade boss grabbed my shadow. Not my bodies. My shadow. It pinned the dark shape under its hook, and pain ripped through me like my bones had become bells. I fell. Pip tried to bite the hook, but its teeth passed through smoke. The launch mark pulsed. If the boss spawned while holding my shadow, I did not know what would happen. Maybe I would be dragged. Maybe I would be cut from my own body. Maybe my shadow would start paying rent somewhere else. I had no time. So I did the only thing that made sense. I duplicated my shadow. Not with magic, I understood. With Pip. I grabbed Pip, slammed a handful of glass wolf shards and screaming coin dust into its mouth, and shoved it into the edge of my trapped shadow. Pip flattened, trembled, and spat out a wobbly gray copy of my shadow on the floor. It looked terrible. The head was too big, and one arm waved even though I was not waving. But the boss did not care. The hook recognized a shadow and held the copy. I rolled free as the boss launched upward, dragging the fake shadow with it. Above, the hollow blade appeared in the central tower plaza and immediately attacked my fake shadow, which flopped around like a drunk flag. Cole saw the opening. He struck. Lightning hit the hollow blade's back, cracking its shell. The boss turned. I deployed an anchor from my new storage space, using the fake shadow as a path marker. A blue portal opened under the boss's feet and dropped it 12 feet into the pavement. Not enough to kill it. Enough to make it furious. Cole laughed into the charm. Did you just trip a boss with your shadow? Technically a counterfeit shadow. You counterfeit shadows now. Keep up. The fight became ridiculous. I could not control the boss directly, but every time it moved, its connection to the fake shadow tugged through the chamber. I used that link to open tiny anchors near its feet, redirecting goblin respawns under it, slime bursts above it, and cold smoke around its head. Cole danced through the chaos, slashing cracks wider. Other hunters joined, confused but grateful. The boss swung its hook sword at Cole. I released a delayed beetle shell through an anchor. The shell popped out like a shield and bounced the hook aside. The boss tried to leap. I dropped 3 sleeping goblins under its landing point. It slipped. One goblin woke up, saw the boss, and fainted. I respected that goblin. Finally, Cole drove both lightning blades into the cracked shell, and the hollow blade burst into black smoke. Its shard appeared in the chamber. This time I was ready. I stole it before the smoke settled. My storage skill unfolded again. The miniature routing room gained a black door. Shadow anchor acquired. I could now place anchors through shadows. Any shadow touching a monster material I had marked could become a spawn redirect point for a few seconds. I stared at my hands. Then at Pip. Then at the city above, where every streetlight, every fire, every collapsing building created moving shadows. Oh, I whispered. Pip jiggled. Oh, this is illegal in several religions. The boss parade should have crushed New Haven. Instead, it became my promotion exam. I turned shadows into trapdoors. Winged horror dove toward a shelter entrance, and I opened an anchor in the shadow of its own wings. It vanished mid-dive and reappeared above the river, where Cole and 3 guild leaders struck it out of the sky. A lava bowl charged down Main Street. I delayed its respawn residue, stole its heat core, and redirected its next leap through the shadow of a broken billboard. It crashed into a water tower and created a steam cloud, so big people later claimed a weather skill had saved them. Swarm Mother released thousands of tiny insect monsters from her back. I redirected half their respawn paths into Pip, who expanded into a slime dome and bounced them around inside like popcorn. Owen saw that and screamed, "My boy is a soup god." Nobody knew what he meant. Neither did I. But it sounded supportive. The more I used the chamber, the more I understood its limits. The respawn room was not alive. It did not hate me. It did not adapt to me. It was a machine made of rules, and rules are only scary until someone finds the handles. The monsters still respawned. The waves still came. The world did not bend because I was special. I bent because I was petty, terrified, clever, and willing to crawl through holes where proud people refused to look. By the time the spiral over the tower reached its final stage, New Haven had survived 12 bosses. The city was burning in places, flooded in others, and covered in enough slime that walking became a personal challenge. But the shelters held, the central plaza stood, Harper's evacuation routes stayed open. Cole was exhausted, bleeding, and grinning like a lunatic. I was worse. My arms shook, my eyes burned from silver light. My storage space felt too full, like I had swallowed a warehouse made of ghosts. Pip had turned into a puddle with eyes and was quietly eating a rubber fang to calm down. Then the final circle activated. It was not in the boss chamber. It was under it. Black glass floor split open, revealing a lower space I had never seen. A circle larger than a city block glowed beneath everything, so deep and bright it looked like a moon trapped underground. A monster slept in it. No, a calamity. It had a body like a dragon, antlers like dead trees, wings covered in stone eyes, and a tail wrapped around a broken crown of buildings. Not a political crown, not a symbol of rulership. Just a ring of ruined stone towers, fused to its flesh like trophies from cities it had destroyed before reaching ours. The name appeared in my vision, quiet and cold. Graveworm. No title, no countdown drama, just a name heavy enough to make my knees weaken. Its launch mark pointed to the heart of New Haven. Not the plaza, not a district, the whole city. If it spawned normally, it would emerge under the central tower and split New Haven in half. Cole's voice came through the charm, thin with static. Liam, tell me that thing in the sky is the end of it. I looked at the sleeping calamity. Not exactly. How bad? I swallowed. It has buildings stuck to its tail. Cole was silent. Then he said, can you move it? I looked at the launch lines. They were not silver. They were white gold, thick as bridges, locked into every spawn artery I had mapped. The graveworm was not connected to one point. It was connected to all of them. Redirecting it was not like moving a train. It was like convincing an entire railway network to blink. No, I said. Then I remembered every person who had laughed at me. Every goblin I had robbed. Every shadow anchor in the city. Every fake spawn point hidden in parking garages, subway tunnels, rooftops, alleys, and one stupid golden statue. I remembered that my storage skill could now hold roots. I remembered Pip could duplicate things badly. Bad copies were still copies. And sometimes bad was better, because the chamber did not reject what it did not understand fast enough. I stood slowly. Actually, I said, I can make it dizzy. I opened my storage. Not a small pocket. All of it. Miniature routing room unfolded around me, silver paths spinning in the air, monster materials poured out in controlled streams. Serpent scales, spider silk, beetle shells, flower nectar, glass shards, black shadow dust, rubber fangs, sticky coins, screaming coins, cold seeds, ash powder. Every ridiculous piece of nonsense I had stolen copied. Ruined, improved, and weaponized. I fed the core of it to Pip. Pip swelled to the size of a wagon. Then a room. Then a small house. It made a noise like a bathtub, trying to become a thunderstorm. Materials inside it duplicated, flawed and unstable, but numerous. I spread them across the graveworm's launch lines. Not to stop the launch. To multiply the choices. The respawn chamber wanted to send the graveworm to the city center through every artery. I gave it thousands of fake arteries. Every shadow I had marked. Every temporary anchor. Every goblin circle. Every beetle maze. Every slime trail. Every stolen spawn point in downtown. The launch mark flared, confused for the first time since I had found the chamber. Not alive. Not angry. Just overloaded. The graveworm began to wake. Its stone eyes opened one by one across its wings. The chamber shook so hard the white walls cracked. I dropped to one knee and drove the serpent scale into the floor. Cole, I said into the charm, when something enormous appears, hit the glowing parts. That is your plan. My plan has layers. What are the layers? Panic, theft, violence, and slime. He laughed, breathless. I hate that I trust you. The graveworm launched. For 1 second, all of New Haven went silent. Then portals opened everywhere. A horn appeared above the central plaza, then vanished. A wing burst through a shadow in the river district, then snapped away. A claw emerged from a subway tunnel, got redirected through a fake anchor, and punched the abandoned stadium instead. The graveworm did not spawn in one place. It was dragged through thousands of broken routes at once, its body flickering across the city like a nightmare caught in a faulty projector. People screamed. Hunters attacked anything that appeared. Cole became a lightning storm, striking every glowing scale, every exposed eye, every claw that flashed into existence for half a second. Harper guided guards to protect civilians from falling debris. Owen stood on a rooftop ringing screaming coins tied to a fishing pole because he thought it helped coordinate attacks. It did not. It did improve morale. Below, I controlled the chaos. Every time the graveworm tried to stabilize, I opened another shadow anchor. Every time a launch line threatened the shelters, I jammed rubber scales into the path and bounced it elsewhere. Every time the chamber tried to correct the route, Pip vomited 100 flawed copies of the marker and made the correction worse. The graveworm roared across all locations at once. The sound shattered windows. My ears rang. Blood ran from my nose. I laughed anyway. Because for all its size, all its terror, all its city-breaking weight, the graveworm had made one mistake. It had entered my room. I gathered every delayed monster respawn I had saved that day. Goblins, beetles, slimes, frost goblins, thornwalkers, flame apes, bone dogs, spiders, everything I had delayed, redirected, tagged, and bulleted into waiting. Then I braided their launch paths into one enormous upward spiral. If the graveworm was too big to move, I would use the entire monster population as a hammer. I released the braid. From across New Haven, thousands of small monsters launched through shadow anchors, not into civilians, not into shelters, but into the flickering fragments of the graveworm itself. It looked like the city had fired every nightmare back at the biggest nightmare. Goblins slammed into wing eyes. Beetles crashed into scales. Spiders webbed antlers. Slimes bounced off claws and exploded into cushioning blobs that held pieces in place long enough for hunters to strike. A frost goblin appeared on the graveworm's nose, screamed, and froze one nostril shut. I almost passed out from laughing and blood loss at the same time. The graveworm tried to complete its spawn in the central plaza. I felt the launch lines converge. This was the moment. I could not keep it scattered forever. So I stopped trying. I opened every anchor under the abandoned stadium. Beetle Maze, the Serpent Redirect, the fake goblin statue line, the shadow gates, the parking lot loops, every ridiculous trap I had built for lesser enemies. All of them became one mouse. The graveworm dropped into the stadium. Not smoothly, not gracefully. It crashed through the sky in pieces that snapped together at the last second, slammed into the arena floor, and bounced off layers of rubber serpent scales I had stacked beneath the ground days earlier just because I wondered whether a boss could bounce. The answer was yes. The graveworm bounced. A calamity that could have split the city in half bounced like the world's angriest ball. Cole's laughter came through the charm, wild and disbelieving. You bounced it. Focus on the glowing parts. I am focusing, but you bounced it. The stadium became a blender of monsters, hunters, traps, and lightning. The graveworm tried to rise. Spider silk cables fired from every anchor and wrapped its wings. Beetles rammed its legs. Slimes cushioned its tail when it swung, stealing impact. Frost seeds burst under its claws. Screaming coins howled from its antlers like cursed wind chimes. Cole ran up its neck, sparks tearing behind him. For a second, he looked exactly like the hero everyone believed he was. But this time, I was not below him. I was everywhere around him. I opened a shadow anchor beneath his feet whenever he needed a step. I redirected falling debris away from him. I launched beetle shells as shields and flower nectar bursts as healing mist for wounded hunters, not because I was a healer, but because stolen monster juice does not care about job titles. Cole reached the largest stone eye on the graveworm's forehead. His blades crossed. Lightning gathered. The graveworm opened its mouth to roar. I shoved a delayed slime wave into its throat. The roar came out as a wet hiccup. Cole struck. The eye shattered. The graveworm convulsed. Its launch lines snapped. In the chamber, every white gold artery cracked at once. Power flooded back toward me. Too much. I could either let it explode through the respawn room and release every monster in random directions, or absorb it into my storage and probably become a fine red paste with organizational features. I chose the stupid option. I opened my storage and swallowed the backlash. For one moment, I was inside every path. I saw the city from below and above. I saw every spawn circle, every sleeping monster, every hunter bleeding in the stadium, every civilian praying in shelters, every shadow under every broken streetlight. I saw the chamber not as a room, but as a map of returning violence. And I saw the handles. Not all of them. Enough. I pulled the remaining launch energy inward, wrapped it in spider silk rules, cooled it with ash, cushioned it with slime, pinned it with serpent scale, and locked it behind the black shadow door inside my storage. The graveworm collapsed. Not dead completely. Calamities do not vanish that easily. Its body cracked apart into stone, bone, and black dust. Its core floated above the stadium, pulsing like a second heart. Cole fell from its head. I opened a shadow anchor and dropped him into a slime cushion. He bounced 3 times, which improved the victory scene. Then the core tried to return to the chamber. I was ready. I reached through the broken launch line and stole it mid-respawn. The graveworm core landed in my hands. It was warm, heavy, and full of sleeping storms. My storage skill expanded one final time that night. Not into a bigger box. Into a command table. Spawn routes unfolded in my mind like glowing threads. Delays, anchors, recalls, redirects, material echoes, shadow paths, all of it became easier to touch. I was still Liam. I was still the guy who had once hidden behind a vending machine with one shoe missing. But now, beneath the city, the apocalypse had a control room. And I had the key. When I climbed out of the stadium tunnel after sunrise, the city looked like it had survived being chewed by a god. The central tower still stood, the shelters were open, hunters carried wounded friends, guards cleared monster debris, civilians stepped into daylight, blinking like they did not trust it. Cole sat on a broken wall with slime in his hair. He looked at me and did not smirk. "You were under it all," he said. I leaned against the wall, too tired to pretend. "Most of it. You controlled the field. I made suggestions, aggressive suggestions." He laughed softly. Then he did something I never expected. He stood and bowed his head. Not low, not dramatic, just enough. "New Haven lives because of you." I looked away fast because victory is easier when nobody is sincere at you. Harper approached next. Her coat was torn, her baton cracked, and her expression was impossible to read. For a second, I thought she would demand answers. Instead, she held up a pair of cuffs. My stomach dropped. Then she tossed them onto the ground beside a captured criminal who had been trying to crawl away under a tarp. "Thought you might want to know," Harper said. "While everyone was fighting, a few people tried looting the shelters. They were found webbed to a lamp post with a note that said, 'Poor timing.'" I blinked. That was not me. Owen from behind her raised one hand. "I may have been inspired." Harper sighed, "Of course." Then she looked back at me. "I do not need to know everything today, Liam, but I need to know one thing. Are you on our side?" The question was simple. The answer was not. Because I had power now, real power, not a sword, not a title, not applause. Control. The kind people would fear if they understood it. The kind bad people would try to steal. The kind good people might ask me to use until I forgot where the line was. I looked at the city, at the broken streets, at the survivors. At Owen feeding Pip a snack like the slime had not helped bully a calamity. At Cole pretending not to watch me with new respect. At Harper waiting for an answer she already half believed. "I'm on the side of people who are tired of being prey," I said. Harper nodded once. "That works for today." For today. That was the important part. The city celebrated for 3 days. They called the battle a miracle. They called Cole the storm blade of New Haven. They called Harper the shield of the shelters. Someone called Owen the soup prophet after seeing Pip, and he immediately tried to print signs. Nobody called me anything official. That was fine. Official attention is just a cage with better lighting. But rumors spread. People spoke of a hidden hand turning monsters against criminals. A ghost in the spawn lines. A shadow commander. Dungeon Rat King, which I hated and Owen loved, because Owen has no loyalty when jokes are available. I kept working. The Graveworm core let me stabilize anchors for longer. I could place delayed respawn zones and store them like loaded traps. I could duplicate low-level drops cleanly now with Pip's help, though anything rare still came out weird. I could recall common monsters from a short distance if they were marked. So I cleaned the city in my own way. A gang tried to take over a food depot. I let them chase me inside, then locked every exit with slime pads and dropped sleeping goblins onto the shelves. When the goblins woke, they found themselves surrounded by canned beans and became too distracted to fight. Harper arrived to find criminals tied up and goblins carefully sorting beans by color. A corrupt hunting team baited monsters toward a shelter to force people to pay for protection. I redirected their own bait trail into their hideout, then recalled the monsters at the last second, so all that remained was evidence, panic, and one frost goblin freezing their leader's pants to a chair. A rich guild tried to claim downtown as private territory. I did not argue. I simply altered the spawn route so every monster in the zone appeared in the fancy lounge they had built on the top floor of a hotel, not dangerous monsters, slimes, hundreds of slimes. By morning, their lounge was a bouncing aquarium of regret. They abandoned the claim. People began to understand that cruelty attracted consequences. They did not know those consequences had a name, a slime, and a storage space full of illegal lunchboxes. But the city felt safer. And I rose. Not with speeches. Not with banners. With results. Owen expanded his shop into a real workshop guarded by slime alarms and goblin pan traps. Harper started sending quiet warnings through him when criminals were too slippery for normal patrols. Cole stopped stealing credit and began positioning his guild where my spawn redirects would make the most difference. We were not a guild. We were not a council. We were 5 people who understood that the apocalypse had a back door. Actually 4 people and a slime. Pip counts. The strangest part about saving a city is that people immediately start trying to measure you. Not thank you, not rest, not maybe let the guy with nosebleeds and slime burns sleep for one full afternoon. Measure. Guilds wanted rankings, the merchants wanted proof, the fighters wanted to know whether the Shadow Commander rumor was real, the criminals wanted to know whether the traps would stop if they killed me. I disappointed all of them in different ways. Guilds invited Cole to a victory exhibition in the rebuilt arena. He asked me to stay nearby because he had learned that any event with applause, cameras, and rich people became dangerous within 20 minutes. He was wrong. It became dangerous in 12. The exhibition was supposed to be simple. Cole would demonstrate a new lightning technique against captured training monsters. The crowd would cheer. Guild leaders would pretend they had not spent the Graveworm fight screaming. Owen would sell snacks shaped like Pip, which Pip found confusing and tried to adopt. I sat in the back row wearing my gray coat, eating popcorn I had absolutely paid for after Owen stared at me like a disappointed parent. A group of hunters entered the arena floor carrying sealed cages. The cages were too klein. That was my first warning. Real monster cages after a battle are dented, scorched, scratched, and usually leaking something. These cages shone like they had been polished for a stage. My second warning was the smell. There was no monster musk. Only oil metal and a sweet powder used to keep weak monsters asleep. I touched the shadow under my seat and sent a tiny anchor thread downward. It passed through the arena stone and brushed the hidden holding area below. There were no training monsters under the cages. There were explosive beetle eggs. Hundreds of them. Someone had rigged the exhibition to hatch a swarm in front of the crowd. Maybe they wanted Cole dead. Maybe they wanted the guilds embarrassed. Maybe they wanted panic so they could rob the evacuation routes. I did not care which flavor of stupid it was. I flicked a sticky coin into the aisle. It rolled under the railing, bounced twice, and stuck to the arena floor near the first cage. Owen saw my hand move from his snack cart. His smile vanished. He quietly began giving free drinks to people near the exits. That was Owen's signal for please move before Liam does something that makes insurance cry. Cole stepped into the arena, blades humming. The fake handlers opened the cages. Instead of harmless training monsters, beetle eggs spilled across the sand, pulsing orange. The crowd gasped. The handlers drew hidden knives. Cole's head turned toward me so fast, I nearly saluted with popcorn. I mouthed 12 minutes. He did not understand. Then the eggs began to hatch. I opened every shadow anchor under the sticky coins I had planted around the arena that morning, because I am paranoid and paranoia is just preparation with bad posture. The hatching beetles dropped not onto the arena sand, but into my storage routing room. For half a second, my inner space filled with clicking legs and angry baby insects. That was awful. I redirected them through a loop of rubber serpent scales and spat them back out above the fake handlers. The beetles landed only on the people who had brought them. The crowd screamed. The handlers screamed louder. Cole blinked, recovered, and used the moment like a professional. He cut the weapons from their hands without slicing flesh, kicked one into a slime pad, and pinned another by the collar with a lightning blade. I released cold ash through the vents under the arena. The beetle eggs stopped hatching. Harper arrived with guards before anyone could escape. The audience thought Cole had sensed the betrayal and controlled the battlefield with lightning pressure. Cole looked directly at me and said very clearly, "Thank you." The crowd exploded in cheers because they thought he meant them. I ate more popcorn. After the exhibition, the captured attackers refused to say who had sent them. That was fine. Their shoes had black lantern wax on the soles, the kind the Leaders Guild used for quiet movement in tunnels. The leader was locked up, but her people were still crawling around the city like cockroaches with knives. Harper wanted to sweep the tunnels. Cole wanted to kick doors in. Owen wanted to sell anti-cockroach charms. I wanted to end the problem so hard the next criminal who heard my name would consider farming vegetables instead. So I built a trap around the Central Station jail. Not inside the cells. Harper would have hit me with a baton if I filled her jail with monsters, and she would have been right. I built it in the tunnels leading toward it. Black Lantern remnants were predictable. They liked darkness, side doors, and attacking when decent people were tired. If they wanted the leader free, they would come through the old service tunnels under the station, cut the power, smoke the guards, and break into the deep cell block. I made sure the route looked open. I even left a cracked gate half-bent, because nothing attracts criminals like a door that whispers, someone else made this easy. Then I filled every shadow in that tunnel with anchors. Not lethal ones. Annoying ones. Slime drops above the floor, spider silk nets behind doors, cold fog behind vents, screaming coins wrapped in cloth so they would start quiet, then build into panic, goblin spawn delays stacked in a side chamber. Beetle shell launcher hidden in a maintenance pipe, and my favorite part, a line of rubber serpent scales under the final hallway, angled like a ramp. At 2 a.m, they came. 20 of them. Dark clothes, curved knives, silent steps, too much confidence. I watched from inside the respawn artery with Pip on my head like a very bad hat. The first criminal stepped through the cracked gate. A screaming coin whispered, "No." He froze. The second whispered, "What was that?" The coin whispered louder, "No." The third said, "Ignore it." That was when the entire tunnel said no at once. The cloth wrapped around the coins burned away, and the sound hit them like a wall of goblin opera. They panicked forward, exactly as planned. Slime pads dropped from the ceiling and bounced them down the hall. Spider nets caught anyone who tried to turn back. Cold fog blinded the middle group. The ones who pushed through reached the rubber scale ramp and slid at high speed directly into the deep holding lobby. Harper's guards were already waiting there with shock batons. It looked like a criminal delivery service. One after another, Black Lantern members shot out of the hallway, slid across the floor, and landed in a pile at Harper's feet. Cole, who had insisted on helping, stood beside the pile with both blades drawn and an expression of deep spiritual satisfaction. Then the leader appeared. She had not been in her cell. She had escaped earlier, hiding in the service pipes above the block, waiting for her people to create the distraction. Her clothes were torn, her hair was cut short, and her eyes were colder than before. She dropped from the ceiling behind Harper with a dagger made from broken cell metal. For half a second, nobody saw her. Except me. Because her shadow touched the wall. I opened a shadow anchor under her feet. The leader fell through the floor and landed in the respawn chamber. Not the main floor. A small side pocket I had prepared with one sleeping frost goblin, 12 sticky coins, and a sign Owen had written that said poor timing. I stepped out from behind a pillar. The leader slowly rose, dagger in hand. This time there were no guards, no crowd, no easy denial. Just me, her, Pip, and the sleeping frost goblin. "You," she said. I nodded, "Me's. You ruined everything. You kept attacking people," I added decoration. She lunged. Leader was fast, faster than I expected after days in a cell. She crossed the distance with her dagger low, not flashy, not dramatic, just aimed at my ribs. I respected that. Then I cheated. My coat opened a storage slit and swallowed the dagger's tip. The blade stopped dead. The leader twisted, abandoned it, and kicked my knee. Pain shot up my leg. I nearly fell. She was good. Too good to play with. So I stopped pretending this was a duel. I recalled the frost goblin early. It woke, saw the leader, saw me, and prepared to scream. I tossed it a cold flame seed. The goblin ate it, grew its icy mustache again, and sneezed. The leader leapt backward, avoiding the first ice burst. But the floor was covered in sticky coins. Her heel stuck. I pulled a spider silk line. Her arm snapped upward. She slashed the line with a hidden shard. Pip flattened under her other foot. She slipped. The frost goblin sneezed again. Ice crawled up the leader's legs, pinning her in place. Still, she smiled. "You think this makes you better than me?" "No." I walked closer, careful to stay outside dagger range. "It makes me prepared. You hide behind monsters." I hide behind walls, actually. Monsters are just a hobby. Her smile twisted. Sooner or later they will fear you. The guards, the guilds, your friends, everyone. You think you can control where monsters come back and still be trusted. That hit harder than her kick. Because she was not completely wrong. Power makes people nervous. Secret power makes them imagine the worst version of you and then blame you for it before you do anything. But I looked at the leader frozen to the floor, at the dagger she had tried to put into Harper's back, at the tunnels full of people who thought cruelty was clever. I do not need everyone to trust me, I said. I need people like you to hesitate. I opened a portal back to the holding lobby and dropped her gently, ice and all, onto the criminal pile. Harper looked down at the leader, then at me stepping out after her. You put a sign in the trap, Harper asked. Owen did. Harper looked at Owen. Owen raised both hands. Branding matters. The leader did not escape again. This time Harper moved her into a reinforced chamber surrounded by light from every angle. No useful shadows, no exposed vents, no service pipes, no dramatic ceiling drops. I added one slime alarm in the hallway anyway. Harper pretended not to notice. The city slept easier after that. For about a week, which in apocalypse time counts as a vacation. I used the quiet to become completely unreasonable. With the graveworm core stabilizing my storage roots, I built what Owen called the monster vending machine. It was not actually a machine. It was a chain of respawn circles, temporary anchors, material sorters, slime duplication sacks, and one broken drink dispenser from the arena concession stand, because Owen insisted every great invention needed a button. The idea was simple. Common monsters spawned asleep. Their drops formed beside them. I stole the drops, fed weak echoes to Pip, delayed the monsters, redirected them into empty zones, and repeated. The vending machine turned harmless respawn windows into materials. Press button 1, get goblin knives. Press button 2, get bone dog fangs. Press button 3, get spider silk. Press button 4, get a random item that Owen called the disaster option, because every 7th pull produced something too strange to explain. I pressed button 4 once and received a live mushroom that screamed my name, 3 beetle chips, and a tiny hat. Pip wore the hat for 6 hours. Machine made us rich, but more importantly, it gave us supplies for defenses, spider silk nets for shelters, cold ash grenades for guards, rubber serpent pads for barricades, slime cushions for evacuation drops. Fang traps that disabled monsters without killing them too close to civilians. New Haven became harder to kill. People noticed. They started asking where the materials came from. Owen told them, ethical monster recycling. Nobody understood, but the phrase sounded responsible, so they stopped asking. Cole trained with me in secret. Not in swordplay. He would have cried if he saw me hold a blade like a confused spoon. I trained him to read weird openings. If a monster stumbled for no reason, strike the joint. If a shadow flickered blue, jump without asking. If a slime appeared above you, do not scream unless it is not Pip. If a goblin lands with a frying pan, duck because that goblin has a purpose. Cole hated every lesson and improved every day. One afternoon, I created a battlefield inside an abandoned mall using sleeping monster dummies, shadow anchors, slime pads, and delayed beetle shells. Cole had to cross from the food court to the fountain without being hit. He made it 4 steps before a rubber fang hit his forehead. Again. He made it 7 steps before a slime pad launched him into a pretzel stand. Again. He made it halfway before a fake goblin dropped from a ceiling vent and slapped him with a pan. Again. By sunset, he was bruised, furious, and moving like lightning through chaos instead of around it. On his final run, I released every trap at once. Fog silk shells, coins, slime, fake goblins, shadow doors, cold seeds rolling like marbles. Cole vanished in a flash. For 3 seconds, I lost him. And he appeared at the fountain, blades crossed, every trap behind him sliced, dodged, or redirected with sparks still floating in the air. He grinned. I threw Pip. Pip hit his face. He fell into the fountain. Never announce victory, I said. From the water, Cole said, I did not announce it. You grinned too loudly. He splashed me. It was probably the closest we came to friendship without either of us admitting it. Harper trained differently. She did not care how flashy the traps were. She cared whether civilians could escape, whether criminals could be captured, and whether a plan still worked when someone panicked. So she made me run drills with guards. I hated it. Not because it was boring, it was terrifying. Harper would point to a street map and say, "Shelter breach here, injured hunters here, fire here, monsters approaching from these 3 alleys. You have 30 seconds." Then I had to design anchor routes fast enough to move danger away without exposing people. At first, I made clever plans that were too clever. Harper broke them by saying, "A child runs the wrong way." I adjusted. She said a guard freezes. I adjusted. She said the monster ignores bait. I adjusted. She said Owen drives a snack cart into the route. From across the room, Owen said, "That feels targeted." "It is realistic," Harper said. She was right. The drills changed my style. I stopped building traps that only punished enemies. I started building fields that protected idiots. And in New Haven, protecting idiots was a full-time job with overtime. The next wave proved it. It hit during a rainstorm. Not dramatic red rain, just cold, miserable rain that soaked coats, killed fires, and made every rooftop slippery. The monsters were drowned wraiths, thin gray things that crawled out of flooded streets and moved through water reflections. Not mirrors, reflections in puddles, windows, and wet metal. They did not copy people. They just used shining surfaces like doors. The first attack nearly reached a shelter because every alley had puddles. Hunters struggled because blades passed through wet smoke unless the core was exposed. Fire failed, lightning scattered, nets soaked through. I went below and found their circles in a blue section of the chamber, where water flowed across white stone without making anything wet. Their drops were pearl-like droplets that floated beside their sleeping forms. I touched one. It slipped through my fingers and splashed into my shadow. A wraith opened one eye. I froze. Then Pip slurped the droplet from my shadow and turned transparent. That was new. Pip blinked, vanished, and reappeared inside my hood. I nearly punched myself. The wraith droplets allowed movement through wet reflections for tiny distances. Dangerous. Useful. Very stupid. I stole as many as I could, but the wraiths woke faster near water. Every second mattered. Above, Harper's evacuation route was collapsing because flooded streets kept spawning wraiths behind the guards. I could not dry the city. So I changed what the puddles meant. Using wraith droplets and shadow anchors together, I turned every marked puddle near the shelters into a one-way chute. Wraiths that tried to emerge there slipped through and fell into the abandoned mall fountain instead. Cole was waiting at the fountain, soaked, annoyed, and ready. For 2 hours, the drowned wraiths kept trying to attack shelters and kept dropping into a shopping mall water feature where Cole electrocuted them in batches while Owen played dramatic music from a salvaged speaker. The guards began calling it the haunted fountain strategy. I called it plumbing. Then the wraith elite appeared. It was tall, faceless, and wrapped in a cloak of rainwater. It did not have a body so much as an outline where a person should be. Its circle was covered in blue-white marks that shifted whenever I looked directly at them. I could not delay it by carving. The marks moved away from my tool. I tried a shadow anchor. The water swallowed it. I tried sticky coins. They dissolved. The elite woke before I could steal its core. It rose from the circle and placed one dripping hand on my chest. Cold flooded my lungs. For a second, I was back behind the vending machine on the first day, weak and breathless, and certain the world had no use for me except as a punchline. Then Pip, still transparent, crawled across my shoulder and slapped the wraith with the tiny hat. The hat stuck. The wraith paused. Shifting marks stopped moving for half a second, confused by the concept of fashion. I carved the frozen mark with the graveworm core. The elite shrieked and launched upward early. But I had marked its hat. Above, the wraith elite appeared in the flooded avenue, towering over Harper's line. The tiny hat sat on its faceless head. Even through the charm, I heard Owen yell, "That is Pip's hat." The wraith raised its arms, pulling every puddle in the district into floating spears. I touched the hat's anchor. The hat became a shadow root. I opened a storage slit beneath it and dumped 500 screaming coins into the wraith's hood. The wraith convulsed. Sound rippled through its water body, exposing the core in its chest. Coal struck from a rooftop, lightning blades crossing through the exposed point. Harper's guards fired shock bolts. The wraith collapsed into rain. Its core returned to the chamber. Pip reclaimed the hat and acted proud for the rest of the week. That wave taught the city something important. The strange defenses were not accidents anymore. Too many monsters were appearing in empty zones. Too many criminals were being delivered to guards wrapped like gifts. Too many disasters were turning into slapstick traps at exactly the right moment. People started looking for the hidden hand. Some wanted to thank it. Some wanted to worship it, which made me deeply uncomfortable. Some wanted to kill it before it controlled them next. The most dangerous group was not a guild. It was a collection of high-ranked hunters who had lost influence because the city no longer needed to beg them for every rescue. They did not wear matching uniforms or wave banners. They simply believed that power should stand in the open where they could challenge it, measure it, and take it if possible. They sent messages through Owen. Face us. Reveal yourself. Stop hiding behind monsters. Owen handed me the notes with a straight face until the third one, then said, I can write better threats than this. I burned the notes. Then I made a public answer. Not a speech. A performance. High-ranked hunters announced they would clear the old museum dungeon, a dangerous site full of relic beasts and cursed statues. They invited the hidden hand to interfere if it dared. So I interfered. The museum was perfect. Huge halls, tall windows, long shadows, display cases, stone statues with dramatic poses, enough hiding spots to make paranoia feel underprepared. Relic beasts spawned from broken exhibits, each one carrying antique-looking cores. The hunters entered with confidence, expecting me to sabotage them. I did the opposite. I made them look amazing. A lion statue beast lunged from a balcony. I redirected its landing 2 feet lower, right into a hunter's rising spear. A swarm of glass birds burst from a skylight. I delayed half of them, so the hunter's wind attack caught both waves at once. A stone crocodile emerged from the floor. I opened a shadow anchor under its jaw, forcing its mouth wide right as a hammer strike came down. The crowd watching from outside cheered. The high-ranked hunters grew smug. Then they reached the main hall. That was where they had planned the real trap. Not for monsters. For me. They had covered the floor in detection powder, hung light crystals to erase shadows, and placed bait materials in the center. If I tried to use anchors, they thought they would see the route and follow it back. It was a good plan. For someone who thought I only used shadows. I used the monster vending machine. Below in the chamber, I had linked the museum beast circles to a temporary sorter. Every time the hunters killed a relic beast, its drop passed through my storage routing room for 1 heartbeat before returning to the normal loot path. During that heartbeat, Pip made a flawed copy. I did not steal the original. I duplicated the echo. The hunters stood in their shadowless hall, waiting for me to reveal myself. Instead, the display cases around them began filling with copied monster drops. Tiny crowns made of bone. Rubber relic claws. Sticky glass feathers. Screaming antique coins. The hunters stared. Then the copies began activating. Not as weapons. As distractions. Screaming coins shouted insults in goblin voices. Rubber claws bounced across the floor and tripped people. Sticky feathers glued sword sheaths shut. A copied statue head rolled in circles yelling, "Nice trap," in Owen's voice because he had added that feature without permission. The hunters lost formation. The elite relic beast, which they had baited into the hall, woke behind them. I delayed its first attack by anchoring through a droplet of wraith water hidden in a vase, giving them time to turn. They barely survived. When the beast fell, the crowd cheered again, but the hunters knew the truth. I had walked through their trap without entering it. Then I left one message written in sticky coin, pasted across the polished floor. Do not confuse hiding with weakness. After that, the challenge notes stopped. The city did not need to know my face. It knew my style. If evil people attacked the weak, monsters tripped them. If greedy hunters baited civilians, the bait came home. If someone tried to expose me with a trap, the trap became a comedy show. My position rose higher than the loudest guild leaders because I did not need their stage. I own the backstage. Still, power has a cost. Not a dramatic curse, not a cosmic punishment, just exhaustion. Every anchor I placed left a thread in my mind. Every delayed respawn pulled like a weight. Every stolen core hummed in storage. Some nights I woke up hearing sleeping monsters breathe under the city. Some mornings I reached for a door handle and saw spawn roots instead of wood. I told no one at first. Then Harper caught me staring at a puddle for 5 minutes because I was checking whether a wraith could use it. She sat beside me on the curb. You are not a machine, she said. I'm more of a vending machine now. Lamb. I sighed. I know. She did not ask me to stop. She knew I would not. Instead, she gave me a rule. 1 full hour a day with no anchors, no traps, no chamber, no monster materials. I told her the city could explode in that hour. She said if the city could only survive because I never slept, then I was building another weakness. I hated how often she was right. So I tried resting. For 3 minutes. Then Owen burst in yelling that Pip had duplicated 27 sandwiches and one of them was moving. Rest remains a work in progress. But even that mattered. Because the next time disaster came, I was ready not just with traps, but with people who could act without me controlling every step. A triple gate opened at the edge of New Haven. 3 colors, red, green, and silver. 3 monster types at once. Flame apes, thorn walkers, and blade moths. The old me would have run into the chamber and tried to puppet the whole battlefield alone until my nose bled and my storage screamed. The new me sent rolls. Cole took the silver gate because lightning disrupted blade moth wings. Harper controlled evacuations through routes I had already reinforced. Owen deployed slime cushions and cold ash belts from the workshop, while loudly pretending he had invented military logistics. I went below and turned the 3 respawn streams against each other. Flame apes wanted to burn. Thorn walkers wanted to root. Blade moths wanted to slice anything moving. So I gave each one the wrong enemy. Flame apes respawned without fruit and landed in thorn patches, where their heat made the roots curl away from civilians. Thorn walkers spawned under blade moth swarms, forcing the moths to cut vines instead of people. Blade moths respawned through cold ash clouds, slowing their wings just enough for Cole to strike. Then I used Pip's duplication sacks to create fake flame fruit and rolled them toward an empty quarry. Every flame ape chased the fruit. The thorn walkers followed the heat. The blade moths followed the movement. Within 20 minutes, the entire triple wave had migrated into a pit outside the city. I sealed the quarry with spider silk cables, bounced the walls with rubber scales, and dropped cold wraith water into the center. Steam filled the pit. The monsters fought each other in circles until their wave timers expired. Hunters arrived expecting a desperate battle and found a monster soup pit bubbling like angry stew. Owen stood at the rim and whispered, "Forbidden gumbo." Harper banned him from naming operations. The triple gate collapse made something clear to everyone. New Haven was no longer surviving wave by wave. New Haven was learning. Barricades had slime cushions, shelters had spider silk shutters, patrol routes avoided known spawn lines, hunters trained to recognize sudden openings, guards carried cold ash and sticky coins. Even civilians knew that if a goblin with a pan appeared and pointed down an alley, you should probably run the other way because the goblin was part of something above its intelligence. I had not become a king. I did not want a throne, crown, office, title, or any object that required sitting still while people complained. I had become infrastructure. Invisible, annoying, essential infrastructure. And honestly, that suited me. But secrets never stay perfectly buried. One night after the triple gate, Cole found the subway crack. I knew he would eventually. He was too sharp, and I had stopped hiding every footprint because part of me trusted him. I found him standing at the broken dungeon wall, staring into the white chamber beyond. Thousands of monsters slept in glowing circles behind him. He did not draw his blades. He did not speak for a long time. Finally he said, "This is where they come back." "Yes, and you have been coming here alone." "Pip comes too." Pip jiggled proudly. Cole turned slowly. His face was pale, not from fear of the sleeping monsters, but from understanding. "You could have destroyed every guild in the city." "Probably. You could have killed anyone who mocked you." I thought about slimes in their beds. That felt healthier. "You could have controlled everything." I looked at the sleeping monsters. "No, I can control where some bad things go for a while. Everything is bigger than that." Cole studied me. For the first time, there was no rivalry in his eyes. Just respect and maybe guilt. "I was cruel to you," he said. "Yes, I was wrong. Also, yes, I am sorry." The chamber hummed softly. A goblin snored nearby and rolled over. I had imagined this apology before. In my angriest moments, I imagined making him kneel in front of the whole city. I imagined speeches. I imagined him admitting that the weak storage boy had surpassed him. But standing there, surrounded by the sleeping engine of the apocalypse, I did not want that anymore. I wanted him useful. I wanted him honest. I wanted fewer people dead. So I said, apology accepted, but if you tell anyone without asking me, I will spawn a frost goblin in your shower. Cole nodded solemnly. That is fair. Then the nearby goblin woke up early, saw us, and screamed. Pip ate its knife. Cole stared. I said, welcome to my life. From that night on, Cole knew the full truth. A few days later, Harper did too. Not because she found the chamber. Because I showed her. She deserved to know what kind of danger sat under the city she protected. I expected anger, fear, maybe a baton to the head. She walked through the white chamber in silence, eyes moving from circle to circle, from sleeping monsters to silver marks. When she reached the boss arch, she stopped. So every battle above feeds this place, she said. Yes, and you have been stealing from it. Strategically borrowing. Lame. Stealing. She nodded. Good, keep stealing. I blinked. Harper looked at the sleeping Rose. These things killed our people. If there is a way to take their teeth before they bite, take them. That was Harper. No dramatic speech, no moral thunder, just a line drawn in the floor and a hand steady enough to hold it. Owen learned last because he already knew too much by guessing, and because I needed someone to appreciate the vending machine. When I finally showed him the chamber, he walked in, stared at the endless sleeping monsters, and whispered, the world's worst warehouse. Then he saw the material sorter. His eyes filled with tears. It has buttons. I knew you would say that. Can I press one? No. He pressed one. Goblin knife dropped into a tray, followed by 3 sticky coins and a rubber mushroom wearing a smaller hat. Owen put one hand over his heart. This is art. Pip stole the smaller hat. By sharing the secret with them, I expected the chamber to feel less mine. It did not. It felt more dangerous, but also less lonely. The first week after the graveworm should have been peaceful. That was the joke I told myself while standing in a room full of sleeping monsters, trying to pry a crystallized dragon tooth out of a respawn circle with a spoon. The spoon snapped. The tooth shot upward, bounced off the ceiling, ricocheted between 3 goblin circles, and landed perfectly inside Pip's tiny hat. Pip looked at me like it had achieved enlightenment. I looked back and said, do not eat that. Pip ate it. A second later, the slime burped a tiny spark, turned purple for half a breath, and duplicated into 2 slimes. Both Pips stared at each other. I stared at both of them. Then both Pips ate the same hat from opposite sides and immediately fused back together, twice as smug as before. That was when I learned the graveworm core had not just improved my storage routes. It had upgraded my nonsense. Before I could steal drops and duplicate weak materials if I had time, luck, and a monster dumb enough to sleep through me robbing it. Now if I fed a material through the stabilized respawn lines, I could make copies before the chamber noticed the original was missing. There were rules, but not boring rules. They were more like the kind of rules a drunk magician would invent while falling downstairs. Common monster fangs duplicated cleanly. Rare crystals duplicated as useless jelly unless I froze them first. Metal claws duplicated perfectly, but every 7th copy came out as a spoon. Slime cores turned into bouncing balls unless Pip licked them. And if I duplicated something while standing too close to a goblin circle, the copy gained goblin confidence, which meant it was either slightly sharper or immediately tried to stab my ankle. Owen called it a miracle. Harper called it a safety problem. Cole called it a battlefield advantage. I called it Tuesday. The city above had no idea how strange my days had become. People were rebuilding broken streets, strengthening gates, training new awakened fighters, and telling stories about the hidden controller who had saved New Haven from the graveworm. Some described me as a masked angel. Some described me as a dark lord. One street vendor sold dumplings shaped like a mysterious hero with dramatic hair. The dumplings looked nothing like me, but they tasted amazing, so I bought 6 and told nobody. That would have been fine, except legends attract idiots. The first sign came during a normal spawn rotation near the West Market. I was lying on a narrow pipe above the White Chamber, watching 27 sleeping wolf monsters cycle through their circles. I had marked each one with a tiny silver dot under the left ear. That let me sort them when they launched. Aggressive ones went to empty streets. Slow ones went near guild training grounds. Small annoying ones went toward criminals who thought alleys had no witnesses. One wolf had swallowed a gold bracelet from some poor survivor before getting killed. I slid a hook into its mouth, pulled the bracelet free, and dropped it into storage. Then my charm buzzed. Owen's voice whispered through it, "You should see this. I am currently elbow deep in wolf spit." "That can wait." "Can it?" "Someone is pretending to be you." I froze. The wolf twitched. I shoved its jaw shut with my knee and slipped through a shadow route to Owen's workshop. He was standing on the roof with a telescope made from monster glass, copper wire, and an unreasonable amount of confidence. He pointed across the district. On the side of a ruined theater, someone had painted my fake symbol. Not my real mark. A fake one. A black hand wrapped around a white circle. Under it, a group of armed awakened fighters were laughing while dragging tied-up civilians into the lobby. Their leader wore a long coat with monster teeth stitched along the collar. Not armor, not a noble uniform, just a coat that screamed, "I have never had a normal conversation with another human being." He raised a knife and shouted something about the hidden hand, demanding tribute. The crowd believed him because scared people will believe almost anything if the person holding the knife sounds confident. My stomach went cold. I had spent weeks moving from the shadows, making sure people survived without knowing my name. And these parasites saw a shadow and decided to sell tickets. Owen lowered the telescope. "Please tell me you are going to do something dramatic." I smiled. Dramatic is the minimum. The theater was surrounded by broken spawn scars, so direct routes were messy. That made it better. Messy areas were where my tricks became art. I dropped into the White Chamber and found the closest batch of monsters scheduled for the West Market. 16 goblins. 8 blade beetles. 4 smoke wolves. 1 sleeping ogre with a cracked horn and breath that smelled like boiled socks. None of them were strong enough to threaten a good guild squad. But I did not need them to win. I needed them to perform. I marked the goblins with sticky coin powder, shaved beetle shell into the smoke wolf fur, and tied a copied graveworm thread around the ogre's horn. Then I delayed them by 12 seconds each, but not evenly. The trick was rhythm. Monsters did not have to arrive together to make people panic. They had to arrive like drums. First beat. The theater doors burst open, and 2 goblins rolled across the floor wrapped in curtain fabric. The fake hidden hand gang shouted in surprise. The goblins shouted louder because I had glued screaming coins to their backs. Second beat. Smoke wolves spawned in the balcony and immediately howled, but their fur released beetle shell dust that turned the smoke into shining silver fog. The civilians saw the fog and ducked. The gang saw the fog and swung at shadows. Third beat. Blade beetles appeared under the seats, not attacking the captives, because I had baited them with monster oil splashed on the gang's boots. Every beetle sprinted straight for the people holding knives. Fourth beat. The ogre arrived on the stage, wearing the theater's red curtain like a royal cape because the goblins had dragged it into the circle by accident. It raised its cracked horn. The graveworm's thread activated. The horn fired a harmless but enormous beam of golden light directly at the ceiling, blasting dust, old posters, and 300 bats into the air. From outside, it looked like a divine punishment. Inside, it sounded like a zoo falling into a drum kit. The gang broke instantly. Some ran out the back. I had already set slime patches there. They slipped, bounced, and landed in a pile of their own stolen weapons. Some tried to grab civilians. I opened storage slits under their hands and stole their knives before their fingers closed. Some tried to shout that they served the hidden hand. I projected my voice through 12 screaming coins at once, low and cold from every corner of the theater. No, you do not. That did it. Even the ogre paused. One gangster fainted standing up. Harper's containment team arrived 30 seconds later because I had dropped a glowing arrow made from copied wolf teeth right outside her station. By the time she walked in, the civilians were free, the criminals were tied in beetle silk, and the ogre was sitting on the stage looking confused while Pip, who had followed me without permission, tried to sell it the tiny hat. Harper looked at me from under the balcony. She could not see my face because I stayed behind a curtain of silver fog. You enjoyed this, she said. A little. The glowing beam was unnecessary. It was theater. She glanced at the stage. The ogre sneezed and a bat flew out of its cape. Harper sighed, fine, it was theater. That night, the fake symbol disappeared from every wall in the West Market. But evil people are like cockroaches with skill points. Step on one group, and 3 more learn to walk sideways. 2 days later, another crew tried to use my legend. This time they were smarter. They did not shout in public. They kidnapped awakened rookies from training alleys, forced them into monster zones, then claimed the hidden controller had chosen the strong and abandoned the weak. The rookies who survived were robbed. The rookies who did not survive respawned as rumors. I hated that more than the theater gang. Theater gang had been loud. Loud was easy. This crew was quiet. Quiet predators thought shadows belonged to them. They were about to learn I had rented the basement. I tracked them with spawn residue. Every time a monster died near a person, a tiny amount of return dust stuck to whatever killed it. Most people washed it off without noticing. Criminals, being dramatic, kept their trophies. One of them had made a necklace from wolf claws. Each claw had passed through my chamber. Each claw remembered the way back. I sat on top of a sleeping troll's stomach and played the claw memories like a map. The lines led to an abandoned shopping arcade under the old train station. Perfect. Lots of empty corridors. Lots of broken lights. Lots of places where a clever person could turn fear into a machine. Owen wanted to come. I said no. He said he had invented a net launcher that could fold a man into a burrito. I said still no. He said the launcher was named Justice Tortilla. I said absolutely no, then borrowed it when he looked away. Cole wanted to come too. He was leaning against the workshop door with his arms crossed, trying to look casual and failing because lightning kept crackling around his fingers. You are going alone, he said. I am never alone. Pip popped out of my hood with 3 stolen screws in its mouth. Cole stared. That is not reassuring. It is to me. I could help. You could also be recognized. I need them confident enough to attack me. His jaw tightened. That was the part Cole hated. He had spent his whole life winning from the front. He did not enjoy watching me win by letting enemies believe I was losing. But he understood results. So he gave me a small lightning charm. One use, he said. What does it do? It makes something regret being close. I pocketed it. That is beautiful. The arcade smelled like mold, rust, and old sugar. Broken shop signs flickered over cracked tile. Mannequins stood in windows with missing arms, which was rude because I was already trying not to be creeped out. The criminals had set up in the central food court. I counted 14 of them. No names. No honors. Just people with blades, stolen charms, and the kind of smirks that made my hands itch. They had 3 rookies tied near the fountain. I let them see me. Not as the hidden hand. As Liam, the weak porter everyone remembered from the early gate days. I walked into the food court carrying an empty bag and wearing my most useless expression. One of them laughed. That sound took me back for half a second. The old days. Being shoved out of loot lines. Being told to carry packs because my ability was trash. Being mocked for running when people with shiny skills posed for cameras. Then I remembered that under my feet, 16 marked monster roots were waiting like loaded fireworks. The laugh sounded much smaller after that. They surrounded me. One asked if I was lost. I said constantly. He swung first. That mattered. Not because of law, not because of rules, not because I needed permission. Because if they attacked first, the rookies would see exactly what kind of people they were. I ducked. The blade cut my bag. 100 copied goblin spoons spilled across the floor. Everyone stared. I said oops. Then I kicked one spoon into a spawn scar. The chamber answered. Goblin respawn root snapped open sideways, not enough to send a full monster through, just enough to spit out its inventory. Knives rained from the ceiling. Not 1 or 2. Hundreds. All copied. All dull on the edge because I had ruined them on purpose. They clanged off tables, buried into cushions, and boxed the criminals in with a glittering cage of useless metal. The crew shouted. The rookies stared like they had just watched a waiter summon weather. I raised both hands. Please stay calm. This is the gentle version. They did not stay calm. 3 charged. I fired Justice Tortilla. The net launcher made a heroic twang, opened backward, wrapped around me, wrapped around them, then bounced all 4 of us into the fountain. For 1 wet second, nobody moved. Pip popped out of my collar, looked disappointed in the engineering, and slapped the water. The slime mark activated. The fountain turned into a trampoline. We launched upward. I cut myself free in midair with a beetle claw, kicked one criminal into a noodle shop sign, bounced off a hanging lamp, and slapped Cole's lightning charm onto the biggest stolen weapon in the room. The weapon was a huge, saw-toothed cleaver leaning against a table. I did not know who owned it. I did not care. The charm flashed. Every metal object touching the cleaver regretted being close. The dull knife cage conducted the charge in a perfect ring. The criminals twitched like puppets doing a terrible dance, then collapsed without dying. The rookies were outside the ring because I had placed the spoons carefully. Yes, I had spilled them like an idiot. No, it had not been random. I landed on a table, soaked from head to toe, one shoe smoking. A final criminal tried to run. I opened a storage slit in front of his ankle and dropped a copied slime ball. He stepped on it, flew sideways, and slid face first into Harper's boots as she entered with her team. Harper looked down. Then she looked at me standing on the table. Then at the rookies. Then at the fountain, which was still bouncing and had launched a chair into a pretzel stand. You said you were going to keep this quiet, she said. I did not scream once. Owen's voice crackled through the charm. Ask her if she saw Justice Tortilla. Harper slowly turned her head toward me. I kicked the broken launcher under the table. No idea, I said. The rookies were saved. The criminals were dragged away. And by morning, the story had changed again. People were not just whispering about the hidden controller. They were whispering that the weakest porter in New Haven had walked into a criminal nest with a bag of spoons and left with 14 attackers in chains. That made guild leaders uncomfortable. Good. Comfort makes powerful people lazy. Discomfort makes them show their teeth. The next problem did not come from criminals using my legend. It came from honest guilds trying to copy my results. Once they realized monster waves were being redirected, every guild in the city wanted to predict spawn locations. They mapped streets, built watchtowers, placed bait, argued over kill zones, and acted like they were seconds away from solving the apocalypse with clipboards. They were not. They were staring at the front door and trying to guess what I was cooking in the kitchen. At first, I let them have fun. Then one guild placed a kill zone directly above a sleeping nest of burrow eels I had delayed for structural reasons. If they killed the next wave there, the eels would respawn under a shelter foundation and chew the support pillars apart. Hundreds of people would drop into a monster tunnel while eating breakfast. I had to stop them without revealing the chamber. That meant one thing. I had to embarrass professionals. Cole hated this plan. You could just tell them the zone is dangerous, he said. And they would ask how I know. Say instinct. They would ask whose instinct. Mind. That is worse, they respect you. He frowned. Is that an insult? It is a tactical disadvantage. Guild had set up floodlights, barricades, and a cheering crowd. They wanted a public victory after weeks of looking useless. The leader gave a speech about courage. The fighters lifted weapons. Vendors sold roasted meat. Children climbed broken walls to watch. Under the street, 20 burrow eels slept in the chamber, with their circles humming louder every minute. I crouched beside the circles, carving delay marks so fast my hands cramped. I could not hold them long. Burrow eels hated delay marks. Their bodies were basically angry ropes with teeth, and the chamber wanted them back underground. So I needed the guild to abandon the kill zone before the wave spawned. I looked at Pip. Pip looked at me. You are going to be brave, I said. Pip put the tiny hat over its whole body. Cowardice is not an option. The slime jiggled sadly. 30 seconds before the wave, I opened a harmless route and launched Pip through a vent behind the guild stage. Pip landed in the leader's dramatic smoke machine. Owen had modified the smoke machine earlier because I asked him for a distraction that smells expensive. He had taken that personally. The machine exploded into pink glitter fog. Pip rolled out wearing the tiny hat, covered in sparks, and multiplied into 4 wobbling copies because of leftover graveroom dust. The crowd gasped. The guild leader stopped mid-speech. Then all 4 Pips began bouncing around the stage, each one projecting a different stolen monster roar. One sounded like a dragon. One sounded like a goblin with hiccups. One sounded like Harper clearing her throat, which terrified me more than the dragon. The 4th sounded like me saying, "Bad idea," over and over in a deep ghost voice. The crowd backed away. The guild leader tried to save face by attacking the slime. That was when I triggered the copied slime balls hidden under the stage. The entire platform bounced. Leader flew up, flipped twice, landed in his own banner, and rolled downhill through a stack of roasted meat. His fighters rushed to help. I opened storage slits under their barricade anchors. The barricades folded like noodles. Floodlights swung around and shone directly into their eyes. Then I launched one harmless juvenile eel into the empty street behind them. It was tiny, barely bigger than a scarf, but it had the confidence of a disaster. It hissed, bit a sandbag, and dragged the whole bag into a sewer hole. The guild panicked. "Underground breach," someone shouted. Finally, they evacuated the crowd and moved the kill zone 3 blocks east, exactly where I had already prepared safe monster routes. The real wave spawned. The guild won. They celebrated like geniuses. I sat in the chamber, exhausted, while Pip returned with a piece of roasted meat stuck inside its body. Owen watched through the charm and whispered, "That was the most respectful sabotage I have ever seen." I said they kept their reputation and nobody died. Cole said their leader is still stuck in the banner. Reputation is flexible. After that, I stopped thinking of the respawn room as a secret base. It was becoming an instrument. The city was not saved by one big attack. It was saved by 1,000 tiny adjustments nobody noticed. A monster delayed here. A criminal baited there. A dangerous wave redirected into an empty arena. A coward made brave by thinking the hidden hand was watching. A bully made careful because he did not know which puddle might turn into a trap. Every circle in the chamber was a key. Every key opened a different kind of chaos. And I was getting very good at playing music with locked doors. Then the white chamber gave me a new toy. It happened when a silverback minotaur respawned with a cracked maize crystal lodged in its shoulder. The minotaur was enormous, with hands like wrecking balls and horns covered in old battle scars. It slept on its circle, harmless for another 40 seconds. I wanted the crystal. Pip wanted the horn. Neither of us wanted to wake the minotaur. So I used the oldest technique in my arsenal. I panicked carefully. I tied one end of spider silk to the crystal, tied the other end to 3 duplicated slime balls, placed a screaming coin near the minotaur's ear, and hit the coin with a spoon. The coin screamed. The minotaur snorted. The slime balls bounced. The crystal popped free and shot across the chamber. I caught it with storage. The minotaur woke, patted its shoulder, looked confused, and launched into the city without the maze crystal that made it dangerous. Above ground, the guild fighting it discovered the mighty maze beast could only run in straight lines and got stuck in a revolving door. I did not laugh. That is a lie. I laughed until my stomach hurt. But the crystal was the real prize. When I placed it against the graveworm core, the chamber lines bent. Not broke, bent. For the first time, I could create false corridors between spawn routes. Not real tunnels someone could walk through. Monster logic tunnels. The chamber believed a monster launching to one location could take a shortcut through another circle first. Owen described it as making the apocalypse trip over its own shoelaces. I described it as finally having a remote control with more than 3 buttons. My first test sent 5 fire imps through a frost slug route. They arrived above ground sneezing snowballs. My second test sent a mud troll through a wind moth route. It launched into an alley, floated 3 feet off the ground for a minute, and spun slowly while trying to look intimidating. My third test accidentally sent 12 goblins through a bakery storage scar. They emerged smelling like cinnamon, became distracted by bread, and refused to fight until someone gave them butter. That was not useful, but it was spiritually important. With false corridors, I could do more than delay and redirect. I could change the shape of a wave. Not the monsters themselves, exactly. Their route, their momentum, their order. A charging beast could arrive dizzy. A flying monster could arrive low. A pack could be split into lines instead of a swarm. A dangerous boss could be forced to spawn with its back turned if I hooked the route hard enough. That single trick turned me from a guy stealing monster drops into the worst stage manager the apocalypse had ever seen. And I needed it sooner than expected. The cracked stadium still held scars from the graveworm battle. People avoided it at night because the ground sometimes hummed and loose stones floated when nobody touched them. Harper's team guarded the area, but guards could only stop people. They could not stop greed. A treasure crew slipped into the stadium after midnight, hunting for leftover graveworm fragments. They found one. They also found the sleeping echo attached to it. The echo was not a full monster. It was a leftover roar wrapped around bone dust, a shape made from bad memory and worse timing. When the crew disturbed it, the echo woke up angry. The chamber screamed through every gold line. I was eating noodles in Owen's workshop when my storage shadow twisted sideways and swallowed my chopsticks. Then the bowl. Then the table. Owen stared at the empty space where dinner had been. "That feels like an emergency," he said. I licked broth off my thumb, or a personal attack. The charm flashed. Harper's voice came through, sharp and controlled. "Stadium breach, unknown entity, civilians inside." Cole was already moving before she finished. I dropped through a shadow root and hit the chamber floor hard enough to bruise both knees. The graveworm circle was pulsing. Round it, smaller monster circles shivered, each one trying to feed the echo above. If the echo absorbed enough respawn residue, it would rebuild a temporary graveworm shell. Not the full beast. Only a small one. Small in this case meant large enough to bite a train in half. I had maybe 3 minutes. The treasure crew above was trapped under collapsed seats. Harper's guards could not reach them because the echo filled the stadium with golden shockwaves. Cole could strike it, but lightning only scattered the roar and made it reform faster. So I did what I did best. I cheated the birth. I opened false corridors from every small circle feeding the echo and bent them away from the stadium. The chamber fought me. The echo wanted mass. It wanted bones, claws, wings, shells, anything it could wear. I gave it accessories. First, I sent it 30 copied goblin spoons. The echo absorbed them and grew a jaw full of spoons. Second, I sent it slime balls. Its tail turned rubbery and bounced every time it tried to slam the ground. Third, I sent it cinnamon root, residue from the bakery accident. The echo's golden roar suddenly smelled like pastries. Cole's voice crackled through the charm. "Why does it smell delicious?" "No time. It has spoon teeth. Focus." It is hard to focus. The treasure crew crawled toward an exit while Harper's team shielded them. The echo noticed. It gathered itself for one real attack, spoon jaw opening wide, golden light building in its throat. I had no clean delay mark left. So I threw Pip. Not hard. Strategically. Pip launched through a false corridor and appeared above the echo's head like a wet comet. The slime landed on its glowing skull, tiny hat first. The echo paused. Every monster I had ever seen paused when Pip did something that made no sense. That was my opening. I used the maze crystal to bend the echo's attack route. Instead of firing at the exit, the golden breath traveled through a false corridor, looped beneath the stadium, passed through a mud troll circle, picked up 3 tons of damp clay, and came back as a giant sticky cough. The echo coughed itself into the ground. Cole hit it with lightning. Harper fired a shock lance. I dumped the last of my copied slime balls under its chest. The echo bounced once. Twice. On the third bounce, I opened a storage mouth beneath it and shoved the unstable roar down into the chamber, not into a circle, but into the empty space between circles where unfinished things went to be forgotten. The chamber shook. The white walls rang like bells. For 1 second, I saw every marked spawn route in the city at once. Every goblin. Every wolf. Every beetle. Every hidden danger sleeping under New Haven like teeth under skin. Then the echo vanished. Above ground, the stadium went quiet. The treasure crew survived. Harper arrested them, not gently. Cole found Pip on the field, still sitting proudly on a smoking patch of golden dust. The tiny hat had a spoon stuck through it. Pip loved it. That night I did not sleep. Not because of fear. Because after shoving the echo into the unfinished space, something in the chamber had opened for me. A shelf. That sounds small. It was not. The shelf was not wood or stone. It was a line of white light floating beside my storage shadow, divided into slots. Each slot could hold 1 delayed spawn pattern. Not a monster. A pattern. A wave shape. A trap formation. A root bend. A mistake I could save and reuse. I had invented spell presets by bullying architecture. Owen nearly cried when he saw it. "You made buttons inside reality," he whispered. "Do not press them." He pressed one. A harmless puff of cinnamon fog filled the room. Pip appeared from nowhere wearing 3 hats stacked on top of each other. Owen nodded through tears. Perfect. With the shelf, my power jumped again. I built presets for everything. Slime trampoline field. Goblin knife rain, dull version. Goblin knife rain, spicy version. Beetle silk arrest net. Smoke wolf blindfold corridor. Frost slug panic carpet. Maze crystal left turn. Maze crystal right turn. Pip distraction, emergency only. Owen suggested naming one preset, sad trombone. I did not ask what it did. I found out when a gang of alley killers tried to ambush me near the old aquarium. They had heard the stories by then. They knew I was not just a weak porter anymore, but they still thought rumors were exaggerated. To be fair, rumors were exaggerated. They said I could summon dragons by snapping. I could not. Yet, they said I had a demon army. I had a slime with attachment issues and access to monster shipping lanes. Close enough. The killers waited until I passed under a broken shark sign, then stepped out with crossbows and charm blades. One told me to hand over my storage items. I looked at the aquarium behind him. Rows of empty tanks stretched into darkness. Cracked glass. Wet floors. Old pipes. A perfect arena. I said, "Are you sure you want to do this?" They laughed. I pressed the preset Owen had made. The world made the saddest horn sound I had ever heard. Not loud. Not magical. Just humiliating. The killers stopped laughing. Then the floor beneath them turned into a frost slug panic carpet. They slipped backward through a smoke wolf blindfold corridor, dropped their weapons into storage slits, and landed in a beetle silk arrest net that launched from 3 empty fish tanks at once. For the finale, harmless cinnamon fog filled the aquarium, and Pip rolled across the top of the net, wearing 3 hats like a judge. Harper arrived because I had sent her a signal. She looked at the tangled criminals. She looked at the empty tanks. She looked at Pip. "Why does this one smell like breakfast?" she asked. Owen touched a preset. "That explains nothing. It explains everything. The criminals were taken away. The city got safer. And I got bolder. Not reckless." People confuse boldness with stupidity because both involve moving forward while danger screams at you. The difference is preparation. Stupidity jumps into a pit and hopes it is shallow. Preparation fills the pit with slimes, paints arrows on the walls, ties a rope to a beetle, and convinces your enemy to jump first. I prepared constantly. I mapped every respawn circle under New Haven. I labeled them by threat, delay tolerance, loot value, smell, and how likely they were to bite me while unconscious. I built a material sorter with Owen that could separate fangs, claws, scales, cores, shells, and weird glowing organs nobody wanted to identify. I trained with Cole in secret, not because I wanted to become a frontline hero, but because if my tricks failed, I needed my body to survive long enough to make a better trick. Cole's training style was simple. He threw lightning near me until I stopped falling down. Harper's training style was worse. She taught me how people attacked when they were desperate, cornered, greedy, or afraid. Then she attacked me like all 4. After 2 weeks, I could dodge a knife, trip a larger fighter with spider silk, open storage under a weapon hand, and deliver a copied slime ball to the face before the person finished blinking. After 3 weeks, Cole admitted I was fast. After 4, Harper admitted I was dangerous. After 5, Owen admitted Justice Tortilla needed a redesign because every test ended with him wrapped in his own invention. Pip admitted nothing and continued stealing buttons. Then came the night of the black rain. It began with a sound like coins dropping on glass. All over New Haven, black droplets fell from a cloudless sky. They hit rooftops and rolled upward. They struck puddles and turned into tiny crawling shadows. They landed on monster corpses and made the bodies twitch before the respawn pole could take them. The chamber reacted badly. Circles flashed in the wrong order. Sleeping monsters stirred early. My delay marks smoked. This was not the world chasing me. This was not the world noticing my cheating and getting angry. It was worse. It was a natural disaster inside the gate flow, like a storm moving through the pipes that fed every dungeon scar in the city. Owen called it a respawn squall. Harper called it an all-city emergency. Cole called it something I will not repeat. I called it unfair because I was finally about to eat a hot meal. The black rain caused 2 problems. First, monsters killed during the squall did not return cleanly. They came back with shadows stuck to them, faster and meaner. Second, criminals noticed everyone was busy fighting monsters and decided that was a great time to rob shelters. I almost admired the stupidity. Almost. The city split into chaos. Cole took the east bridges, cutting down shadow-tainted beasts before they reached the evac roads. Harper held the central shelters, catching thieves while also directing civilians away from spawn scars. Owen stayed in the workshop, feeding me route calculations through the charm while pretending not to panic. I dropped into the chamber, and for the first time since I found it, the white room did not feel sleeping. It felt sick. Black droplets crawled along the circles like ants. Monsters twitched in their sleep, claws flexing. Some were about to wake early, and if they did, the chamber would launch them half-formed. Half-formed monsters were nightmares. Not stronger exactly. Wrong. A wolf with legs in the wrong order. A beetle with too many wings. A slime that remembered being fire. I had to clean the lines while managing the wave above. No pressure. I started with the smallest circles. Goblin roots could handle abuse, mostly because goblins were already accidents with knives. I rerouted them through frost slug carpets, which slowed the black rain sticking to them. Then I delayed the wolves and scraped shadow droplets off their circles using copped spoons. The spoons melted. I duplicated more. Those melted too. Hip helped by eating black droplets, turning gray, shivering, and spitting them into a jar Owen had made for questionable liquids. The jar immediately tried to crawl away. I put a brick on it. Above ground, a shelter alarm screamed through the charm. Harper's voice cut in. Liam, I have armed looters at the south shelter, and a shadow brute forming 2 streets away. Send the looters outside. That is usually frowned upon. Not into the brute toward the mural alley. A pause. You trapped the mural alley. I improved it. Harper did not ask more questions. That is trust. The looters thought they were escaping through a narrow alley covered in old monster murals. I had painted those murals myself with spawn-reactive dust, badly. Every monster looked like an angry potato, but art was not the point. When the looters entered, the black rain activated the dust. The painted monster eyes lit up. The alley roared. Not with real danger. With recorded sound from screaming coins, wolf howls, ogre sneezes, and one clip of Owen yelling after dropping a wrench. The looters panicked and ran straight into a beetle silk net Harper's team had placed at the far end. The shadow brute arrived behind them, but I had prepared a false corridor there too. Charged into the alley, saw the glowing mural monsters, decided they were rivals, and punched the wall for 30 seconds. That gave Cole enough time to arrive and split it apart with lightning. 1 problem down. 100 left. The squall intensified. In the chamber, a line of black rain reached a rare circle I had never used before. It belonged to a cathedral mantis, a monster with blade arms folded like prayer and a body covered in stained glass wings. Even asleep, it felt sharp. If shadow rain corrupted that thing, it would launch into the city as a flying execution machine. I sprinted toward it. The floor warped. The black droplets combined into a crawling ribbon and wrapped around my ankle. Cold shot up my leg. For 1 second, the chamber blurred. I saw the first day again. The vending machine. The goblin chewing my backpack. The broken wall. My own fear, huge and ugly. The squall was not intelligent, but it carried echoes of every monster death it touched. It pressed those echoes into my head, trying to make me freeze. I almost did. Then Pip bit my finger. Hard. I yelped, kicked free, and stumbled into the cathedral mantis circle just before the black ribbon reached its wings. No time for careful carving. No time for clean delay. I slapped both hands onto the circle and poured every preset shelf slot into one ridiculous formation. Slime trampoline field. Frost slug panic carpet. Smoke wolf blindfold corridor. Maze crystal left turn. Goblin knife rain dull version. Cinnamon fog. Pip distraction. Sad trombone. The circle flashed like a festival. The cathedral mantis launched. So did I. That was not intentional. I burst out above New Haven, riding the back of a half-delayed cathedral mantis, while black rain fell upward around us. The city spread beneath me in broken lights and silver streets. The mantis shrieked, wings glowing with stained glass fire. I clung to its neck and immediately regretted every decision that had led to this beautiful disaster. Cole's voice exploded through the charm, Why are you in the sky? Temporary promotion. Get down. Working on it. The mantis tried to fold its blade arms and cut me off its back. I opened storage under one arm and stole the edge from its blade. Not the blade. Just the edge. The arm swung, hit me with a smooth, flat surface, and slapped me sideways instead of slicing me in half. I bounced off a rooftop awning, landed back on the mantis, and jammed a copped spoon into the joint of its second blade. The spoon broke. The joint stuck anyway because goblin confidence is a cursed blessing. Below, shadow-tainted monsters flooded toward the central shelter. I had no time to defeat the mantis properly, so I turned it into transportation. I dug the maze crystal into its wing root and bent its flight path down the main avenue. The mantis screamed forward like a stained glass missile. I opened preset shelves below us. Frost carpets bloomed on the road. Smoke corridors split the monster packs. Dull knives rained in perfect lines, herding beasts away from civilians. Slime trampolines launched wolves onto rooftops where Cole's lightning caught them midair. Cinnamon fog covered the shelter entrance, because apparently that preset would never leave me alone. People looked up and saw me riding a glowing blade monster through black rain, throwing traps from empty air, while a tiny slime clung to my shoulder wearing 3 hats. That was the moment the city stopped thinking of me as a rumor. I was still not a frontline hero. I was worse. I was the disaster behind the disaster, steering the teeth. The cathedral mantis bucked hard above the plaza. Its corrupted wings flared black. It was about to break my root bend and dive into the shelter. Harper was below, surrounded by civilians. Cole was too far. Owen screamed something about wing resonance that sounded smart and completely useless. I had one move left. I pulled the jar of black rain from storage. The questionable liquid inside hissed at me. I looked at Pip. Pip looked offended. I know, I said, terrible snack. Then I poured the jar over the mantis's own respawn mark. The black rain tried to corrupt it again. But I had already bent that mark through 8 conflicting presets. The corruption hit slime bounce, frost panic, smoke blindfold, maze turn, dull knife, cinnamon, Pip distraction, and sad trombone at the same time. The mantis forgot what dramatic threat it was supposed to be. It folded its wings, sneezed glitter, and dropped. I jumped. Pip bounced. Mantis crashed into the plaza fountain, which I had quietly converted into a slime trampoline earlier because I have learned never to trust fountains. It bounced upward. Cole arrived like a thunderbolt and struck its exposed core. Harper's team fired binding lances. I landed on a street sign, slipped, hit a noodle cart, and stood up covered in broth for the second time in recent memory. The black rain slowed. The corrupted circles in the chamber began to clear. Across New Haven, monsters returned to normal respawn flow. Normal was still horrifying, but at least it was familiar horrifying. By sunrise, the squall ended. The city survived. The shelters held. The criminals from the mural alley were in cells. The treasure cruise went quiet. The fake hidden hand symbols vanished for good. And every guild leader in New Haven had seen me drop from the sky riding a cathedral mantis like I had ordered it from a menu. The next morning, nobody called me leftover. Some tried to call me master. I hated that. Some tried to call me lord. I hated that more. Owen suggested monster traffic manager. I threw a spoon at him. Harper settled it without asking me. During a public safety briefing, she referred to me as Liam. Just Liam. No title. No mask. No dramatic name. The sound of it hit harder than any title would have. Because for the first time, my name did not come with laughter behind it. People said it like it belonged beside survival. That should have been enough. But power is strange. The more I gained, the more I realized how much bigger the dark was under my feet. The chamber still had sealed circles I could not read. The boss arch still hummed at night. The black glass walls still reflected no light, but sometimes I heard things moving behind them. And the grave room core, which had once felt like the biggest prize in the city, now pulsed like a key waiting for a lock. I did not tell the others right away. Not because I did not trust them. Because I wanted one quiet day. One day where no monster wore a building as a hat. One day where nobody tried to rob a shelter. One day where Owen did not press a button labeled experimental and fill his workshop with screaming mushrooms. I got 6 hours. At noon, the chamber produced a circle I had never seen. It was small, tiny actually, barely wider than my palm. White lines curled inward around a sleeping creature shaped like a beetle, except its shell was clear, and inside it floated a miniature map of New Haven. I stared at it for a long moment. Then I whispered, "Oh, absolutely not." The map beetle twitched. Every marked route in the chamber flickered. This creature was not a fighter. It was a guide monster, a pathfinder for waves. If it launched, every monster in its group would find the fastest path to crowded areas, shelters, wounded fighters, and weak barricades. No wonder past waves had sometimes moved with cruel accuracy. These little things were the brains of the flow. And I had found one asleep. Harmless, unprotected, full of directions. My hands started shaking, not from fear this time, but excitement. I did not steal its core. That might wake it. Instead, I marked the shell with the gentlest silver line I could carve and fed the maze crystal into the mark. The miniature map bent. One shelter route curved into an empty parking tower. One hospital route curved into a flooded underpass already blocked by Harper's guards. One training yard route curved into the old arena where Cole had set lightning rods. Then I did something childish and brilliant. I added snack routes. Small monsters following the beetle's directions would smell food piles made from monster bait and run into containment pens instead of living people. Owen helped build the bait launchers. Harper approved the pens after staring at me for 5 full seconds. Cole asked why one route led through a bakery. I said morale. The next wave proved it worked. 100 monsters spawned across New Haven and immediately made terrible decisions. Goblins sprinted into empty parking levels, chasing fake sausage smell. Wolves ran into training yards and got pinned by lightning nets. Blade beetles marched into containment pens, where Pip sat on a platform, wearing the tiny hat like a tiny mayor. A troll followed a snack route into the bakery, got distracted by actual bread, and had to be lured out with a cart. People watched from barricades as the apocalypse missed them. Not completely. Nothing was perfect. But enough. Enough that civilians began returning to streets. Enough that weaker awakened fighters got time to train without being thrown into meat grinders. Enough that the city breathed. And when people breathe, they start looking around. They saw who had been protecting them. They saw the guilds that had posed. They saw the criminals who had preyed on them. They saw Harper's guards dragging dangerous people away in silk nets instead of body bags. They saw Cole fighting with me instead of above me. They saw Owen selling monster-proof charms that mostly worked in snack-shaped slimes that Pip kept trying to adopt. Most of all, they saw me walking through the market without lowering my head. The same vendors who once ignored me now saved dumplings under the counter. The same fighters who once shoved packs into my arms now stepped aside. The same guild clerks who once laughed when I asked for basic training now could not meet my eyes. I did not rub it in. I wanted to. I am not a saint. I had several speeches prepared. One involved a dramatic spoon. But when the moment came, I just bought noodles and kept walking. Because the best revenge was not yelling at people who doubted me. The best revenge was becoming too busy saving their lives to care about their opinions. Of course, that noble thought lasted until one old guild captain muttered that I had only survived because of luck. I turned around. The market went silent. Pip rose from my hood wearing the tiny hat. I reached into storage and pulled out a copped spoon. The captain went pale. I smiled and handed it to him. "For your luck," I said. The crowd laughed. Not at me. At him. It was petty. It was beautiful. That evening, I returned to the chamber in a good mood. I checked the map beetle, adjusted 3 snack routes, stole a rare frost seed from a sleeping wolf, duplicated 20 shells for Owen, and taught Pip not to lick the black rain jar. Then the deepest signal pulsed again. This time it was not a scream. It was a knock. Soft, slow, coming from beyond the black glass. The graveworm core answered inside my storage with a heartbeat of gold light. All the little circles dimmed. Every sleeping monster turned its head toward the same wall. Even Pip stopped moving. I stood in the white chamber, surrounded by the harmless bodies of things that had once terrified me, and felt the room become a doorway. Not open yet. Waiting. I could have called the others. I should have. But I needed to understand what I was looking at before I dragged them toward another nightmare. So I followed the pulse deeper. Past the rows I had mapped. Past the boss circles I had scarred. Past the storage shelves full of stolen patterns and ridiculous presets. Past the place where the graveworm had tried to be born wrong. The chamber curved inward. The black glass trembled. And for the first time since I fell through that broken wall, I wondered if the respawn room was only one room of something much larger. That thought should have scared me enough to stop. Instead, I smiled. Because fear had been steering my life for too long. Now I used fear as bait. I pressed my hand to the pulse and listened. The answer pulled me onward. While the city repaired the stadium above without any idea what I had just heard, I crossed into the deepest chamber and studied the graveworm circle. It was cracked now, its white gold launch lines dark. I had sealed most of the backlash, but the faint pulse beneath the floor had become a path. Not dangerous. A signal. I followed it through the lower room, past the boss circles, past the black glass walls, to a place where the chamber curved inward like a closed eye. There, hidden behind broken gold chains, was another wall. Not white stone. Not black glass. Transparent crystal. Behind it I saw lights. Not monster circles. Doors. Hundreds of doors floating in darkness, each one marked with a different city skyline. Some doors were bright. Some flickered. Some were cracked open. One door far away had a line of red light crawling along its edge, like something on the other side was trying to get in. I placed my hand on the crystal. A route appeared in my mind. Not to New Haven. Beyond it, other cities had respawn rooms. Other apocalypses had back doors. And some of them were already bleeding into each other. I should have been terrified. I was. But I also smiled. Because everyone else would see the next disaster when it arrived at the front gate. I had found the hallway behind the gates. Pip jiggled beside my foot. Owen's voice crackled through the charm, distorted from the distance. Liam, please tell me you are not touching anything shiny. I looked at the crystal wall. At the doors. At the red lights. Then at the graveworm core, pulsing quietly inside my storage. Define touching, I said. Owen groaned. Cole's voice cut in. What did he find? Harper answered before I could. Trouble. I pressed the serpent scale against the crystal. A tiny silver scratch appeared. The far red door pulsed in response. Something enormous moved behind it. I laughed under my breath, exhausted, afraid, and already thinking of 27 ways to cheat whatever came next. Because I was done being the guy who ran from monsters. I was the guy waiting in the room where they came back. And if the apocalypse wanted a second round, it was going to have to respawn through me first.